We'll just wait another minute or two. We're just waiting for Ranking Member Schakowsky. She'll be here any second. There we go. All right. Well, I just want to welcome all of our witnesses here today. And isn't it nice that we can come here under no crisis, no angst or anxiety? Things are actually improving in the automobile industry, and we just want to say, to the industry and its suppliers, what can we do to help? And that should be a question we actually ask more often. But it's almost, I said a love fest in one of our hearings, but in reality, that's about what this is. We just want to help. We want you to do better. So go to my official. Oh, yeah, those type of details. So good morning and welcome to our third installment of our subcommittee series of hearings entitled Our Nation of Builders. Today we're focusing on the U.S. automotive manufacturing sector, a sector that supports more manufacturing jobs than any other manufacturing industry, employing almost 8 million Americans across all 50 states, according to the Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers. Our subcommittee will be hearing from a distinguished panel of witnesses consisting of experts from several sectors within the automotive manufacturing industry. And it's my hope that our witnesses can shed some light on the criteria taken into consideration when making a determination on where to initiate manufacturing and where to expand manufacturing in the United States. I also hope to surface important details on the effect that expanding or initiating manufacturing can have on a community, whether it is through job creation, increased tax revenue, or charitable involvement. Auto manufacturers, suppliers, and dealers have certainly faced tough times in the last few years. Our Great Recession saw vehicle production fall from 10.7 million in 2007 to 5.7 million in 2009. However, since 2009, we've seen this figure rebound to 8.7 million vehicles produced and 100,000 jobs recouped or added. This is progress, but we have more to work to do to create jobs and grow our nation of builders. Attracting foreign investment to build manufacturing facilities in the U.S., lowering barriers to expansion, and incentivizing companies to increase domestic production capacity should be top priorities in Congress. By all accounts, increased domestic manufacturing is a net positive. When we increase manufacturing, we not only increase direct employment, but also take advantage of the auto industry's tremendous employment multiplier. 800,000 direct jobs represents a total economic effect of almost 8 million domestic jobs. We all know that more jobs means less unemployment, more tax revenues for cities and states, and a better quality of life for thousands of Americans. What increased domestic manufacturing also means is that the U.S. can expand its export base and shift from being a net importer to a net exporter. Policies aimed at promoting increased domestic manufacturing, a higher level of foreign direct investment, and increased exports are critical right now given the current negotiations on the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the potential for a U.S.-EU trade agreement. When discussing trade agreements, many automatically think about tariffs. However, there is much more to these pacts than tariffs on imports. This subcommittee has jurisdiction over and is very interested in non-tariff related barriers. To that end, we would be very interested to hear the opinions of our witnesses when it comes to the positive effects that pursuing a regulatory mutual recognition standard should have on the domestic automobile industry. I'm sure that as free trade talks continue, this will be an important issue for this subcommittee. With us today, we have 8 witnesses on 2 different panels. The first panel will consist of Joe Henricks, President of the Americas for the Ford Motor Company. I have a Ford. Little suck-up moment. Scott Dahl.
So do I.
So, there you go. Ranking, teamwork here. Scott Dahl, Regional President for Starters and Generators in North America for Robert Bosch. Thank you. Our second panel, James Wehrman, Senior Vice President of Honda North America Manufacturing. Chris Nielsen, President of Toyota Manufacturing in Texas. Scott Paradise with Magna International, where he is Vice President of Marketing and Business Development. Annette Parker, Executive Director of the Automotive Manufacturing Technical Education Collaborative. William A. Smith with American Axle and Manufacturing, where he serves as Executive Director of Government Affairs and Community Relations. And finally, Kathy Kinsey, Deputy Secretary with the Maryland Department of Environment and member of the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council. Hope that all fits on your business card. Again, I would like to thank our witnesses for appearing here at our subcommittee today. And I now recognize the ranking member, Dan Schakowsky, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really welcome all of our witnesses and look very much forward to your testimony. This is the subcommittee's third hearing of the year and the third in our series of manufacturing, a critical sector of our economy that creates good jobs for American workers. Nearly 800,000 employees in the motor vehicle industry and parts manufacturing, and they support millions of additional jobs nationwide in other industries. And without a doubt, it's valuable to look at the factors that have contributed to the current strength of the industry and the potential for future growth. Clearly, we're doing something right, and you're doing something right. The big three U.S. auto companies have rebounded significantly from the 2008 financial crisis, and 10 other major auto manufacturers now have facilities located here in the United States. The industry is investing in creating new technologies, including those for improved safety, emissions control, and fuel economy, and rolling out new features and achievements seemingly every single day. Manufacturing of cars, trucks, and other products has shifted substantially from the image many of us still have. Like the rest of our society, manufacturing has gone high-tech. There are more computers in the design room, on the testing floor, in factories, and more in computers in the cars themselves. The changes in the manufacturing process and the rapid pace of innovation means that the auto industry depends on a workforce that has the education level, skills, experience, and credentials to step into those jobs that are available. I know that even in my little auto shop in my neighborhood, you really have to have a pretty good knowledge of computers to even touch a car these days. At our previous hearing, we heard that steel executives are having difficulty finding qualified workers. In almost all of your prepared testimony, everyone that's testifying, you mentioned the need to expand educational opportunities and job training for workers and applicants so that your companies can continue to grow. I'm hopeful to hear more about how STEM and technical education, skills training, and workforce development can be leveraged to further strengthen the auto industry. And I must say, we've been talking about this for a while, but I think it's really time to see fairly dramatic changes in our preparation of our students as they move toward the outside world and jobs. I hope to hear also how you are working to get all consumers, from purchasers of the most high-end models to the most basic, the newest critical features and the latest fuel economy elements that will help buyers truly get the most value and peace of mind for their money. Let me just say that I was a big supporter of the help that our government offered to the auto industry, and I think that the industry itself took full advantage of that. Not taking advantage of the taxpayers, but actually bringing back the industry, and we're very, very happy about that. I will want to talk in my questioning about some of a particular safety feature, mainly the prevention of backover accidents, and ask you about those. And I thank all of our witnesses for coming here today to testify. I yield back.
Thank you. At this time, I recognize the Vice Chairman, Leonard Lance, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased that we are able to reschedule the hearing from the cancellation in March, and I welcome the new witnesses who have been added since then. New Jersey, the state I represent, has 1.8% of automotive jobs in the United States, and these are primarily corporate rather than manufacturing positions. From the panel today, Ford and Toyota have both regional offices in the Garden State and contribute vital business to New Jersey. So I thank you for your contribution. The North American headquarters for several other companies are in New Jersey as well: BMW, Mercedes, Jaguar Land Rover, Volvo, and Mitsubishi, none of which I can afford personally. New Jersey accounts for approximately $22 billion in new car sales, and the Garden State has 123 supplier companies and nearly 3,000 dealerships. This yields a great deal of revenue at both the federal and state levels. New Jersey also has a vital role in the supply chain. Along the eastern seaboard, our ports are used primarily for incoming shipment of automobiles and parts. I'm encouraged that more foreign direct investment is coming to the United States and that our domestic automotive industry, including manufacturers and suppliers, is innovating and expanding. We have challenges regarding STEM-educated employees in the U.S. workforce, the ways our complicated tax code affect businesses, and the lack of certainty regarding governmental projects related to business. I welcome your testimony and your suggestions about the ways in which government can be a better partner to the manufacturing community and to the automotive industry in particular. And I thank you for your participation today. And I'm pleased to have others have the remaining portion of the 3 minutes, and I would be happy to yield to my colleagues. I yield to the Vice Chair of the full committee, Ms. Blackburn of Tennessee.
Good morning and welcome. We're delighted that you are here. And on behalf of our constituents in Tennessee who are involved in the auto manufacturing industry with Toyota and Nissan and GM and Ford Motor Credit, which is located in my district, Bosch has a presence there. We are delighted that you're here. We like building things and making things in Tennessee, and we think we do a pretty good job of it. And one of the frustrations that we're hearing from so many of our manufacturers is the debilitating effect that overreaching government agencies, regulatory agencies, are having on their ability to do business here and manufacture here. So we're delighted to hear from our panel and welcome that panel today. And we do seek your input. We like Made in America, and we want it to be a good, healthy environment. With that, I yield back my time.
Thank you. Others who wish to speak?
Please. We need to delay for another minute. Oh, Henry's here. All right, no further time. Then gentleman yields back his time. And now the gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman from Nebraska. I appreciate your stalling for time for me to get here from our other committee. We have 2 committees meeting simultaneously, which makes it difficult. I'm glad you're holding this hearing on auto manufacturing. Motor vehicle and parts manufacturers play a major role in the U.S. economy. In my home state of California alone, the broader auto industry employs more than 412,000 people. We need a vibrant U.S. auto industry that leads the world in innovation. However, it was just 4 years ago that the financial crisis left our domestic auto industry on the brink of liquidation if President Obama had not acted forcefully to rescue the industry. The livelihoods of millions of Americans would have been lost. Since that time, the auto industry has emerged more productive and profitable, thanks largely to the rescue engineered by the President. The industry is also more innovative, which has led to job growth. There are 2 areas in particular in which rapid innovation has become especially apparent. First, there has been a significant advance in emission control and fuel economy. Emission control technologies help the environment, but they also create jobs. In 2010, these new technologies were associated with $12 billion in total economic activity. Consumers are increasingly considering fuel economy at the point of purchase when they're deciding on what car to buy. Reflecting an agreement with automakers, the Obama administration set rules to restrict greenhouse gas emissions and require an average fuel economy of 35.5 miles per gallon by 2016 and 54.5 miles per gallon by 2025. Fuel economy innovations include alternative energy vehicles, full and hybrid electric vehicles, and various energy efficiency technologies. This is tremendously important, and it's ironic that the other subcommittee of our full committee that's meeting at this moment is trying to pass a bill to approve the tar sands pipeline from Canada. They don't want to hear the discussions whether it's a good idea or bad idea, or the pipeline's good or the pipeline's not good. They don't care that the tar sands, in order to be sent through a pipeline, is going to require so much of use of energy that it's going to add to our global warming problem. Rather than discuss things that we can do to become less dependent on oil, they say, well, what we need is to produce more oil, even if it pollutes our environment. The second particular innovative area for autos is safety technology. It's been driven by consumer preferences for safer cars. Electronic stability control, airbags, seat belts, child restraints are now mandatory and have saved thousands of lives. Newer advances in safety technology include advances in collision avoidance, adaptive cruise control, and rear view cameras. Innovations like these make cars less polluting, less dangerous. They're good for the environment, they're good for public health, they're good for the safety of American families, but they're also good for motor vehicle and parts manufacturers. I understand that some of our witnesses today will advocate for regulatory harmonization, both with other countries and with states. As the United States continues to negotiate the Trans-Pacific Partnership and begins its work on the U.S.-EU agreement, we must ensure that the push for regulatory consistency does not create a race to the bottom. You can be consistent, but you can be consistent with the lowest protection. We don't want that. I have consistently believed in the principle that trade agreements negotiated by the U.S. should not compromise our environmental or safety standards here in this country or abroad. We should strengthen the competitiveness of our auto industry by raising our own standards, not by weakening those of others. In addition, we need to remain mindful that the progress we've made on cleaning up cars hasn't just happened. Time and again, the states have taken the first step and demanded cleaner cars. That certainly happened in California. Those state successes have then been expanded at the national level. We should be supporting innovative state efforts, not trying to undermine them. We have done well, and we must continue to do well to produce good cars, safe cars, less polluting cars. And I'm proud of the auto industry, and we ought to continue to do what we can to help them. Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, Mr. Waxman. And at this time, we turn it over to our witnesses. And so, Mr. Henricks, you'll have 5 minutes, and being the experienced person you are, you know the lights in front of you. Green, yellow means start wrapping it up. Red means you can stop. So with that, Mr. Henricks, you are recognized for your 5 minutes.
All right, good morning, and thank you, Chairman Terry, Ranking Member Schakowsky, and all committee members for providing us this opportunity. My name is Joe Henricks, and I am President of the Americas for the Ford Motor Company. Ford is a global automotive industry leader, but our success is especially tied to our competitiveness here in the United States, where we conduct the vast majority of our research and development, produce more than 2 million vehicles annually, and support manufacturing in 48 states through our supplier network. Now, I've been with Ford since December of 2000. Before that, I spent 10 years at General Motors and 2 years in private equity. I started at Ford as a plant manager, and I worked in 7 different manufacturing plants in 5 different states in the United States throughout my career. More recently, I was president of Ford's Asia Pacific and Africa region based in Shanghai, China. Before that, I served as Group Vice President, Global Manufacturing and Labor Affairs, responsible for the operations of 105 assembly, stamping, and powertrain manufacturing plants. So manufacturing is and has been my world. Manufacturing matters. It remains the backbone of every successful economy in the world. As an example, one job at an auto plant supports 9 additional jobs. This year, Ford is creating more than 2,200 new salary positions right here in the U.S. This builds upon the 8,100 salaried and hourly jobs we created just last year. Ford demonstrated we can compete with automakers around the world. We are now lean, more efficient, and we are producing cars, utilities, and trucks with quality, fuel efficiency, safety, smart design, and great value. Government is also a key stakeholder in helping shape the competitive climate our industry depends on. I'd like to highlight 4 key areas that are critical to Ford. First, corporate tax reform. The U.S. has the highest corporate tax rate among developed countries. A lower rate frees up capital that can be reinvested in new products, technologies, and manufacturing innovation. We are encouraged that Congress and the President have both identified the need to drive down the corporate rate to ensure American companies remain competitive. Tax reform can further expand economic growth and jobs. Second, regulatory efficiency and certainty. We need a performance-based, data-driven approach to regulation, especially as we develop emerging technologies like vehicle-to-vehicle communications and driver assist features. We need efficiency in the regulatory process that provides certainty and avoids a patchwork of state regulations that can undermine efficiency, often with no societal or environmental benefit. When multiple regulators do exist, we need to work together to ensure that we ultimately develop standards that are achievable and consistent with one another so that compliance costs are minimized. New regulations also must be monitored to ensure that they are consistent with underlying assumptions, market conditions, and technological advancements. As an industry, we work together to shape one national program for fuel economy regulations, projecting standards over an unprecedented 10-year period. Our support for this effort was dependent upon a robust and equitable midterm review, which is absolutely critical. Data collection must begin today to support a final assessment in 2018. Third, trade. Ford has supported every free trade agreement approved by the United States, and Ford is the leading vehicle exporter in the United States. We need to continue to open new markets to American-made products and ensure that new trade agreements are not just to reinforce one-way trade. Trade issues are not just about tariffs. Trade flows can be significantly skewed by using non-tariff barriers, including currency manipulation, to protect home markets and subsidize exports. We firmly believe exchange rate values should be determined in the marketplace, not by governments. We encourage the U.S. to include strong and enforceable disciplines to prevent currency manipulation as the future of trade agreements. In addition, trade agreements can also help harmonize regulations across borders. A U.S.-EU free trade agreement that pursues regulatory harmonization and mutual recognition of standards would enhance competitiveness in both regions. Fourth, training and education. We need to continue training our current workforce and encourage education in math, science, and engineering if America is to remain competitive and innovative in the future. For our current workforce, continued upskilling is critical to maintaining our competitive performance. Existing federal training programs should be flexible, work closely with states, and prioritize incumbent worker training. In summary, other countries are leveraging their workforce and markets to encourage and attract manufacturing. I experienced this firsthand in China and throughout Asia. For the U.S. to continue to lead, we have to be more innovative, efficient, and collaborative. We'll need your help to ensure that government policy supports manufacturing. What's at stake is not just the future of Ford or American manufacturing, but the very future of jobs and growth across our great country. Thank you.
Thank you, and well timed. Mr. Dahl, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay. Chairman Terry, Ranking Member Schakowsky, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Scott Dahl, and I'm the North American Regional President for the Starter Motors and Generator Division of Robert Bosch. I'm particularly honored to be here today because North American manufacturing, U.S. manufacturing, has supported me. It put me through college, and it made me the person I am today. My father became a journeyman tool and die maker back in 1966 and worked there in GM and Chrysler until the late 1980s when he transitioned to a die engineer without a 4-year degree. Robert Bosch founded our company in 1886 when he opened the workshop for precision Mechanics and Electrical Engineering in Stuttgart, Germany. Today, Bosch employs more than 300,000 associates across the globe, including 15,000 here in the United States. We have deep roots in the U.S. Our founder first opened his New York office in 1906, where he had learned about American ingenuity as an apprentice under Thomas Edison. Now we operate more than 100 manufacturing, engineering, and service sites across the country. We have 4 business sectors: automotive technology, energy and building technology, consumer goods, and industrial technology. Automotive is our largest sector, comprising of nearly 60% of our business, and our automotive technologies touch almost every part of the vehicle, with specialized business units devoted to vehicle safety, advanced diesel systems, electronics, gasoline system, hybrid technologies, and car multimedia, just to name a few. Together with our customers, we make vehicles safer, cleaner, and more economical. In January, we unveiled our prototype automated driving test vehicle, outfitted with Bosch advanced radar systems and computer algorithms. Many of our high-tech components and systems that support automated driving will, in the near term, help drivers avoid collisions, save fuel, and reduce emissions. Predictive emergency braking will reduce the severity and number of crashes in the near future. Engine start-stop systems and high-efficiency alternators help improve fuel economy and reduce emissions up to 8% and 2% respectively. And both systems provide an excellent cost-benefit ratio, as they can easily be integrated into existing systems. None of these incredible advancements would be possible without strong and sustained investment into innovative products. Research and development are at the heart of Bosch success. Approximately 42,000 Bosch engineers work at 86 locations across the globe and file an average of 19 patents per day. One innovation project underway in collaboration with the University of Michigan, AVL, and other partners is something we call Access. This project is 50% funded by the Department of Energy Vehicle Technology Program. Access aims to increase the efficiency of a gasoline engine up to 30%, and because the U.S. government is supporting this high-risk, high-reward project, we chose to establish the Global Center of Competence for this technology here in the U.S. This project is an excellent example of public-private relationships that can keep the U.S. at the forefront of innovation. While the U.S. continues as a world leader in innovation, there's a growing need for workplace development and worker training. To illustrate the challenge facing Bosch and many other manufacturers, I want to highlight South Carolina, where many of our automotive products are made. First, the good news. Bosch will have added approximately 450 jobs over 5 years in South Carolina to support the manufacture of products ranging from precision machine fuel injectors to electronic stability control and engine management systems. However, there has been a significant struggle to identify and hire skilled workers for these positions. Bosch recently joined the Department of Commerce in hosting an economic roundtable at our Charleston plant. And this significant lack of skilled workers was echoed by other employers from the region, as well as several economic development specialists. Our plant managers across the country expressed the same frustration. They have worked diligently to attract employees, participating in job fairs and military veteran recruiting events all across the country. Along with our fellow manufacturers in South Carolina, Bosch embraced several different avenues to address this challenge, including direct engagement with and support for local technical colleges and in-house apprenticeship programs. At just one of our South Carolina plants, we have graduated 308 apprentices in 3 different curriculums: electrician, mechanic, and toolmaker. And in March, we also provided a $400,000 donation to Greenville Technical College to support their training program. The intent of these programs is to produce individuals like my father, who have hands-on, real-world experience to help companies like Bosch innovate, develop, and manufacture the next generation of technology here in the United States. While Bosch recognizes that occupational training is part of our social responsibility, the reality is that significant resources are required to hire, train workers who are not prepared to enter the modern manufacturing workplace. We are willing to do our part, but we need greater flexibility and focus from our nation's education system so K-12 schools can instill the base knowledge, interest, and skill set required for jobs in science, technology, engineering, and math, referred to as STEM. This is vital to keep the U.S. attractive for investment. In fact, this is one of the issues that Bosch considers to be very important when we look at where we put our investments. Looking to the future, Bosch sees many exciting opportunities on the horizon. At the top of the list is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. We support this endeavor and believe that it would result in notable benefits for the automotive industry and consumers, particularly in the form of enhanced regulatory harmonization and standardization. Both the U.S. and the EU maintain stringent requirements and performance standards for motor vehicles and motor vehicle components, and this is particularly true relative to passive and active safety technologies and carbon emissions. Significant benefits could be accrued from additional regulatory harmonization between the U.S. and EU, and we look forward to engaging with the committee as negotiations progress. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before the committee, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, both well done and much appreciated. My first question is to Mr. Hendricks, and you testified about the job creation and improvement over the last couple years, but what do you attribute, what does Ford attribute to the job growth in the auto industry and the recovery?
Well, certainly coming out of the global financial crisis and the recession that occurred not just here but in most parts of the world, we are seeing increased demand for autos today as the U.S. economy starts to improve. But at Ford specifically, the restructuring actions that we undertook back in 2006, 7, 8, 9 led us to have a much stronger business, which is now growing. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've increased our market share and are now reinvesting in our business. We received lots of support along the way from all of our stakeholders to make that happen. But clearly, as the U.S. economy improves, we are able to reinvest here in the United States. We converted many of our manufacturing facilities from truck plants to car plants to adjust to the new reality of where the auto market has gone and where it's going. And we're investing in high technology and new technologies to meet the new CAFE and other requirements that are out there for the industry. We're very proud to be investing in the United States. And with the 8,100 jobs we created last year, 2,200 salary jobs this year, plus 1,200 at our Flat Rock facility we'll be adding this summer, you can see that we are investing in America and growing.
I appreciate that. You also mentioned, and if you could answer fairly quickly, that the effective tax rate impacts Ford's global competitiveness. Could you be more specific?
Yes, as you know, the U.S. has one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world and certainly the highest amongst the large economies. When you want to compete as a manufacturer to export, you have to have a competitive environment to operate in. We just started shipping Ford Explorers from Chicago here in the United States to China. We're competing with manufacturers who have different tax rates, so our cost structure is different. If you want to have a manufacturing base that's capable of exporting here from the United States, we need to have a competitive tax rate vis-a-vis the other countries of the world we're competing against.
Now, do you know if Ford has said whether a 25% or 28%, have they gone into those type of details?
We haven't, we've said, listen, this is so important to our industry that everything should be on the table as part of the conversation here, that what we want is a lower tax rate so we can reinvest.
Very good. I appreciate that. Mr. Dahl, by the way, putting you two together, a U.S.-based automotive company and then the European-based company of Bosch's size and impact in the industry was purposeful on our part. So I want to know, first of all, as a European country, you mentioned in your testimony opening up the Innovation Research Center in the United States, that you chose the United States. What were the factors that led to that decision?
I think that there's several factors when we take a look at the investments of R&D in the United States. One is, of course, the innovative and can-do attitude that all the associates in the United States tend to have. It's different here. Everyone's willing to work together as a team to try to find a solution for these topics and kind of think outside the box. So we also like to look at developments that are for regional specific. So Bosch does have our research and development centers in RTC in Palo Alto and in Pittsburgh. So we support full R&D, corporate R&D here, but then also our divisions have regional development activities in the United States as well, which also support the global R&D. So really the attitude of the people, the education, the innovative spirit, these are really the focus points for us having it here, along, of course, with our customer base, which is also very interested in our activities.
Several of our universities are engaging in research and development of advanced manufacturing technologies. Does that factor into the decision for Bosch?
Absolutely, absolutely. We partner with several universities ourselves in Michigan and other areas to have these advanced technologies and utilize those resources in our activities.
Mr. Henrich, same question.
Most definitely. When you think about manufacturing leadership, partnerships with universities is critical to get the new technology that is out there, and we do a lot of that partnering as well.
What can you, either one of you, say specifically one breakthrough that's been helpful that's come through a partnership with the university? And you can quit saying University of Michigan.
I mean, I was going to bring the example of the access issue where we are achieving this 30% through a various array of technologies, working with University of Michigan.
We just wish Fred was here to hear all of this, but he's upstairs. All right, I appreciate that. And now the ranking member, Ms. Schakowsky, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. As promised, I wanted to ask you about the issue of rear view visibility. Every year, NHTSA estimates that there are 228 fatalities and 17,000 injuries, 100 children, who, in my view, needlessly die as a result of being backed over by drivers who can't see them. I was the lead sponsor, along with my Republican colleague Peter King, of the Cameron Gulbranson Kids Transportation Safety Act of 2007, which required a rulemaking to improve visibility and prevent those tragic backovers. I mean, we would have press conferences every 6 months or so, and parents and grandparents would come holding pictures of their children that they had literally killed. So in the proposed rule, NHTSA estimated that rear view video systems would reduce fatal backovers by 95%. So we're awaiting finalization of the rule, and NHTSA concluded that the cost to include rear view cameras in cars that already have some sort of in-vehicle display is less than $90 per vehicle. So my question for you, and I will want to get an answer also from Mr. Wehrman and Honda and Mr. Nielsen of Toyota. So each year more and more vehicles are sold with these in-car displays. What percentage of cars sold by your company currently come with those display screens, and what are your projections for the next year, and when will you reach 100%?
Thank you. I don't have with me the specific percentages of vehicles that have displays in them, but we can certainly follow up on that. I can tell you that at Ford, all of our light-duty cars and trucks sold here in the United States have the option of having a rear-view camera. And we've been moving forward with a lot of new technology with the displays. As a matter of fact, the take rate on My Ford Touch, which includes a display, has been growing every year, and it's substantially up this year. I will have to follow up with you on the numbers regarding the displays.
Let me just ask you this, because obviously it's my view that everyone should have access to rear visibility and other safety features. I mean, there are so many ways in which our children, we can't protect them from the world, but this is one where we know this will prevent these kinds of horrific fatalities. And so recognizing this potential, does Ford support the finalization of the rear visibility rule?
Well, we at Ford want to continue to work with the government to find the right solution that makes sense for customers and for safety. We've always been advocates for safety. There are many technologies that help with identifying any obstacle or person in the rear of the vehicle, for example, sensors, as well as rear view cameras. And so we're open to certainly continuing to work together to find the right solution that works for customers and clearly keeps everyone safe.
Right. Except that the kind of research that we've done is that even the sensors, and regardless of how you place the mirrors, that we still have these blind spots, and that the most surefire way is to have these rear view cameras. Now, the auto industry did support originally the legislation, not the particular technology. But now we're down to the question of whether or not we're going to have this particular technology. I mean, that is the issue. And, you know, I certainly would love to have the support of the industry and hope that we can work together on that particular technology.
Thank you. I'm sure we can work together because clearly we all have the same interest in mind.
Thank you. I yield. No, I don't yield back. I wanted to ask Mr. Dahl about the investments in fuel injectors, for example, for clean diesel passenger cars. Understand that your company announced over the next 5 years it will invest $125 million and create approximately 450 new jobs in a manufacturing facility in Dorchester County to this effect. I wonder how much progress has been made thus far.
We actually are getting ready to launch our new high-pressure fuel pump, and that will basically lead the market, if you will, with regards to performance and fuel efficiency improvements. And additionally, we're utilizing the manufacturing base there in Charleston, and we will export. So we'll actually supply 15% of the world's exports of that technology out of Charleston for that high-pressure pump.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you. The Vice Chairman of the subcommittee is now recognized for your 5 minutes, Mr. Lance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hinrichs, you have testified that Ford created an impressive 8,100 jobs in the United States last year, including 1,000 jobs that were repatriated from other countries. Would you please explain to the committee what factored into the decisions to repatriate those jobs, and more broadly, to what do you attribute job growth in general?
Well, the work we've done inside our company and certainly with the UAW to make our business from a manufacturing standpoint much more competitive has allowed us to bring more work back in. So some work that was done overseas, transmission work in Japan or some supplier work in Mexico, has been returned to work here because we have a much more competitive manufacturing environment today. We're also seeing strong growth in the industry here with Ford, and our volumes are growing, which is also helping with that. We also made some announcements that we're bringing more production back into the U.S., including a recent announcement that Cleveland will bring a transmission from currently built in Spain back to Cleveland, Ohio. So the work we've done with the UAW to make our contract and our operating patterns much more efficient is allowing for that.
Thank you. This is good news, and I think we're all pleased to hear that, and I hope that trend might continue. I know that our recovery has been slower than all of us would like. We are hearing some concerns at the moment about the European market, and would you comment on the European market as it affects Ford?
Sure. Ford announced a pretty aggressive restructuring plan for our business in Europe in October, which includes the closure of 3 manufacturing facilities. Europe, as an industry, is going through some of the similar situations that we went through here in North America several years ago, which means overcapacity and the need to rationalize that capacity. And Ford is taking a leadership role in Europe in making that happen. It's not easy to do, but it's necessary, just as we did here in closing 16 manufacturing facilities to now allow us to have the ability to grow with a much more competitive cost structure.
Thank you. You've stated in your testimony that there has been a significant struggle to identify and hire skilled workers, and of course many Americans who are out of work or who are underemployed wish to work or wish to work fully. And you've also stated that you are pleased to see that some states are starting to pilot programs like Germany's dual education approach. And could you describe to the committee your view on dual education and how we might improve so that as many Americans as who want to work are able to work?
Well, yes, we've been very fortunate in the growth we're seeing in our employment has attracted a lot of interest. And in fact, at Ford, probably because of our history and the strength of our brand, we've been able to attract a lot of good talent and are getting the talent we need. But our supply base continues to tell us that one of the biggest challenges they face is getting skilled labor in the manufacturing environment to help support our business. We've been focused on upskilling our workforce, both salaried and the manufacturing workers in the plants, for the new technology that have been discussed about what's happening in the future, because we are a high-tech business.
Of course. Thank you. Mr. Dahl, might you comment on that regarding making sure that we have the necessary skills so that young people can go into manufacturing?
Absolutely. I think Bosch values manufacturing very, very much. Some of our top executives have a manufacturing background. For instance, Mike Mansuetti, the president of Bosch North America. These apprenticeship programs we feel are absolutely vital. If you take a look at how Germany is set up with their dual education system, where you get to go through the standardized schooling and then you have to apply with the company, you get accepted with that company, and then you get the specialized training for not only the manufacturing but also other areas. We see that to be very beneficial in Germany, where the unemployment rate for young people has dropped significantly due to these. So bringing these types of programs into South Carolina, North Carolina, all the other states, we think is a very big advantage for us.
Thank you. I'm not aware of these figures. Does Germany have a lower unemployment rate among young people, lower than our rate here in the United States?
Yes, they do, sir.
And at least in part, in your opinion, is that due to this dual education approach?
Yes, I believe it is.
That's certainly something we should analyze in this country moving forward. I have 10 seconds left, so I will yield back my time to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And at this time, it is my distinct honor to recognize not only the Dean of Congress, but what we consider as the Dean of the automotive industry. Mr. Dingell, you are now recognized.
Your friendship, for your very fine introduction, and for the having of this hearing today. First, welcome to our witnesses, especially Joe Henrich, who comes from the great company Ford, which is headquartered in my district. I'd also like to welcome Chris Nielsen from Toyota. The trucks his plant makes were substantially designed in my district. Now I'd like to use my time to gain a better understanding of the potential benefits of a free trade agreement between the United States and the European Union. Trade is a tricky subject, and I think here there may be an opportunity to do some good, as long as it results in job creation and advances the public interest. Mr. Henrich, does Ford currently export vehicles to parts or parts from the United States to the EU? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Henrich, has Ford announced plans to expand its vehicles or parts exports to the EU? Yes or no?
Yes, we have.
Mr. Henrich, are there differences between U.S. and EU vehicle standards? Yes or no?
Yes, there are.
Does Ford believe these differences inhibit its ability to export vehicles from the United States to the EU?
Yes.
Do? Yes. Okay. Mr. Henrich, would harmonization of these standards reduce Ford's design, engineering, and manufacturing costs? Yes or no?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Henrich, would harmonization of these standards benefit all automakers with a manufacturing presence in the United States? Yes or no?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Henrich, does Ford believe that harmonization of these standards with EU would not lead to a diminution in U.S. vehicle occupant safety? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Henrich, and just so my colleagues and I understand the term harmonization a little better, would you please submit for the record what Ford believes the term would mean within the context of the trade deal which we are now discussing?
With the European Union?
Just, yes, and just submit that for the record.
Okay, we will, yes.
Now, Mr. Henrich, does Ford believe harmonization of standards would aid in the development of common global vehicle platforms? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Henrich, would the development of such platforms enhance Ford's ability to export from the United States?
Definitely yes.
And that would generally benefit American manufacturers too, would it not?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Henrich, does Ford believe U.S. automakers can be competitive in price and quality by exporting from the United States? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to ask a question or two about how a potential U.S.-EU free trade agreement might influence trade relations with Asian countries. Mr. Henrich, again, are standards in Asian countries where vehicles are produced different than the U.S. and EU standards? Yes or no?
Yes, they are.
Now, Mr. Henrich, am I correct that China alone is expected to expand its production to well over 20 million vehicles in the near future? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Hendricks, does China, although China does not export many automobiles today, do you expect China to eventually become a major auto exporter? Yes,
Yes.
or no?
Yes.
And the U.S. and EU respectively have 15 million vehicle markets. Is that correct?
Generally, yes.
Now, Mr. Hendricks, with this in mind, would common standards help U.S. and EU vehicle manufacturers to compete better with their Asian counterparts? Yes or no?
Yes.
And also specifically with regard to the Chinese.
All the Asian manufacturers.
Now, in conclusion, does Ford believe a U.S.-EU free trade agreement would create opportunities to enhance U.S. global competitiveness? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Hendricks, I'd like to contrast the potential benefits of a U.S.-EU free trade agreement with what would happen if Japan is allowed to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. Is it true that foreign automakers have only approximately a 5% market share in Japan?
Yes.
I would note that I have been complaining about this having existed because of the way the Japanese behave with regard to closing down on imports. Now, Mr. Hendricks, based on Ford's experience, is it reasonable to assume that permitting Japan to become a party to TPP would result in Japan's making meaningful policy changes? Yes or no?
No, it wouldn't.
So if we're going to let them in, we ought to see to it that they first agree that they're going to open their markets. Am I correct?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Hendricks, in other words, the potential benefits to U.S. automakers would be greater in a U.S.-EU free trade agreement than in a TPP with Japan as a member. Yes or no?
Yes.
So thank you, Mr. Hendricks. It seems that there are significant opportunities for U.S. automakers in a free trade agreement with the EU, but questionable benefits if the Japanese get into a TPP without opening their markets, which have been closed tighter than a drum since World War II. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you for your courtesy, Mr. Chairman, and I am delighted to see that the committee is going into these matters, and since the committee has jurisdiction over these things, I would expect that we will actively and very interestedly see to it that the TPP is in the benefit of the United States, our workers, and our industry, and not in the benefit of a market-closing country like Japan. Thank you.
So noted and brilliantly done as usual. At this point, we recognize Vice Chairman of the full committee, Ms. Blackburn, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that y'all would both be here. Mr. Hendricks, let's talk about that Ford Motor Credit Unit there in Tennessee. 800 employees. I've had the opportunity to be there a couple of times, as I had said, and I'm just curious how these credit units are going to fit into your plans for the future, and what we can do within the financial system to make those captive finance arms continue to work on behalf of the commercial end user parents. If you could talk about that.
Yes, thanks. Ford Credit is an incredible part of our company and our success over the last several years, and we're so glad that we could keep Ford Credit as a captive part of our business. I'm actually on the board of Ford Credit, so I get a close look at the business, and we're very proud to be in the Nashville area and a part of Tennessee. It's critical that all the regulation that's going into place, which has good intentions, does not allow for unintended consequences of the inability for captive finance companies to compete when it comes to serving dealers for wholesale and retail, and serving customers for retail financing. And I think that's one thing we should keep in mind to make sure that as we move forward with the regulatory environment here in the United States, that we can allow for consumers to get access to credit and for dealers to have access to credit for their wholesale financing.
Well, thank you for that. And, you know, I think it's so important just to remind each of us that you can manufacture all the things that there could possibly be or anyone could possibly want. If they cannot get credit and cannot afford it, you're not going to have the end user out there that is going to be able to benefit from those items. And indeed, trade is an important component, but that domestic marketplace is also very important also. And I would appreciate, as you see things that are a hindrance to this, that you would bring those forward and be open in articulating those to us. Mr. Dahl, let me ask you, you talked about Bosch's patents that you hold, and just very quickly, piracy and illicit products in the marketplace. How is that affecting you all? What kind of impact are you seeing there?
A lot of the piracy, obviously, coming out of the Asian Pacific area hasn't affected our automotive industry in a large fashion.
Okay.
In some of the aftermarket areas, perhaps, but nothing from an OE perspective.
Okay. If you have further information on that, I would appreciate knowing that, and I would think you all could probably give us some stats on that. We continue to fight the impact of piracy on U.S. products, whether it's entertainment or manufactured products. Let me ask, you talked about your dad. I liked hearing you talk about your dad and his engineering abilities. And I'm sure because of that, you're particularly close to what engineers are doing to innovate and solve problems. One of the things that comes forward to us many times is the impact of these blended fuels. The E10s, E15s, the corrosive nature that plays on the engines. Is this something that you all are looking at? You know, it seems as if we're approaching an issue on one hand, let's use the renewable fuels. On the other hand, we're getting less gas mileage, less miles per gallon, and it's having an adverse impact on the systems. So what are you all doing to help address this?
Certainly, a lot of our research and development activities are in that direction of how can we withstand these corrosive fuel combinations. We've made a lot of progress up to this point in time, but we need much more.
Mr. Hendricks, how about you? What's Ford doing?
Well, you know, Ford's been a leader in advanced technologies, and we support moving forward with all of them. We want to make sure that, for example, on E15 and products like that, that we don't do disadvantage to the vehicles on a retroactive nature. Vehicles need to be designed and capable to use these new technologies, and we can't just artificially go back and say, let the older vehicles
let me
use
ask
them.
you this. How much added cost does this put on the vehicle as you're having to go in and design so that it can take the corrosive nature of these blended fuels? How much more does it make a vehicle cost?
Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have specifics with me, but there certainly is an increased cost in the powertrain system to be able to handle the advanced fuels. We're very supportive moving forward with that, but we want to make sure that we understand what those costs are as we get the benefits, because there's all kinds of new advanced technologies out there, including electrification of vehicles and all these alternative fuels. All of them need to be part of the solution, but we need to make sure that we are looking forward and not necessarily just arbitrarily giving letting older vehicles use the technology.
Right. Plus, we want to make certain people can afford those cars. If you could submit that information to me, I'd appreciate it. Yield back.
Thank you. At this time, we recognize the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Guthrie, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for being here, and the rest of the panel that'll be here next. My dad's a Ford retiree, so I grew up in the automotive industry. Matter of fact, I left the automotive industry when the good citizens of Kentucky allowed me to come here. So, and it is massive. I mean, people need to understand how massive it is. I remember I left the Army to go work in a factory, and I'm watching a power steering pump bracket that was on the Ford Explorer going down, about 60, 70 an hour going down the line, and you pick one up, and it's this big, but every one of them had a power steering pump attached to it, 4 wheels, 4 tires, windshield. So, and that was only one car, and one model of one car for one company. And so having a robust automotive industry is just so important to all of us. And when Toyota came to Kentucky, my district doesn't have the big plant. I wish it did, but we have a lot of suppliers that came with it. And so those type of brackets and things are made in my district, and Magna is in my district to serve Ford. They're there to sell bodies, to truck them up to Louisville to your plant, and also General Motors makes the iconic Corvette right near where I live. So it's great to have you guys here to talk about this. The thing that I want to focus on, and I've already talked about a minute and a half, but I think the automotive industry is so important. But everywhere I go in my business, whether it's in my district manufacturing plant, and from my experience in a manufacturing plant, today with the unemployment rate that we have, nobody can find qualified workers. And what are you guys trying to do? As the state level, we're trying to do more. I know we got a bill that got out of the House to go to the Senate to try to help with the Skills Act that Virginia Fox has put forward. But it just seems like we have this disconnect of, people just dropping out of looking for work right now. And everybody's looking for workers if they can get the work with the right skills. And something they can't get just hourly work. Just people come in to do basic skill work as well. And what are you guys trying to do? I just address it. And I know, like the next panel, we'll talk about it a little more, I guess. But you pay well. It's not like they're coming to earn minimum wage jobs.
Yes,
either.
we're proud of the jobs we create. And you mentioned Louisville. We hired 2,000 people last year, and we had to cut off the application at like 18,000. The interest is exciting to work at Ford. We're proud to be a longstanding member of the Commonwealth. I think we're actually the second largest employer in the state of Kentucky now. When you look at the skill requirements in this country for manufacturing specifically, it comes back to what Scott said also. Technology, engineering, science, math, these skills and these subjects matter. And if you look at the Asian countries, they're emphasizing this in their schools and their disciplines when it comes to education. So one thing we need to do is get back to emphasizing that innovation comes from science and engineering and math, and make that a priority with our students. I have 3 teenagers who are in high school right now emphasizing the importance of those subjects. And also continual training, one thing we worked very closely with the Commonwealth on, and continuing to upskill our workforce, because technology advances. You hire somebody today, and 10 years from now, the technology has changed dramatically in manufacturing or other places. So working together with governments locally, regionally, to continue to help train and have policies to help develop training programs are very important.
Mr. Dahl, what are you guys focusing on in trying to bring the skill levels or finding people that are employable?
I think the issue is on both the skilled labor and on the engineering side too. So the skilled labor, of course, we are implementing our own apprenticeship programs. We're working with the technical colleges. We're supporting these colleges with training material, textbooks, grants even to bring the students in. And on more of the engineering side, we're supporting the Society of Automotive Engineering A World in Motion programs, the FIRST Robotics programs, where we're actually working with these people. In fact, this Saturday we're hosting a VIP reception for that FIRST Robotics in Michigan. It's so critical for us to actually have our engineers go work with the young students and get them excited about this technology so that they can move forward in their own, shall we say, education path.
Yeah, well, we did it. We started a factory. My father left Ford and started a factory in the 1980s, and we found we couldn't find tool and die makers, industrial, the guys you're probably looking for, and we had to really create them. That's what actually got me involved in politics, started working with a tech school. And we found there was a whole floor full of smart people, very smart people. They didn't figure out they were smart in high school, or they didn't figure, or somebody didn't tell them they were smart in the aptitudes that they had. And we have one guy that was essentially a high school dropout almost. Well, just barely got out. That's now got his engineering degree because he flourished. And so that's my passion. I'm out of time, and we'll hit that on the next panel, I'm sure. Well, thank you for your coming here today.
The gentleman yields back. At this time, I recognize Mr. McKinley for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to hear Ford's perspective on this issue. We have the condition of our roads and bridges. I'm a fellow of the ASCE, and we know that bridges are rated at a C, and our roads are rated at a D in their condition. And with the CAFE standards that are being promoted to get up to approximately 55 miles per gallon, the CBO is claiming that we're going to have a reduction in revenue by about 21%, or a loss of reportedly at $57 billion that we would otherwise use for infrastructure. What would you suggest that we should be doing to replace that revenue so that we can maintain our bridges and roads if we're going to maintain 55 miles per gallon?
Well, I think infrastructure in the United States is a very critical discussion item for manufacturing even, because getting parts moved around, having solid and predictable routes for transportation is critical to a manufacturing base. So it's a very applicable topic for us today. At Ford, we believe that it's Congress' responsibility to work through the funding mechanisms. But clearly, when you look at the countries, the advanced economies that are out there driving manufacturing today, the road systems, the rail systems, bridges, et cetera, are part of the infrastructure investment priorities that go on in government. China is a great example. I just lived there the last 3 years. And that infrastructure drives the ability to be able to manufacture competitively. As far as funding goes, I think there's many alternatives, and obviously Congress will consider those. But I do think that the current status of our infrastructure here in the United States needs to be a priority as we move forward to be competitive in
But
manufacturing.
don't you see it, we're exacerbating the problem by pushing 55 miles per gallon in a short time frame, that obviously $57 billion, that's just to replace what we currently have, and our bridges are at C and our roads at D. We've needed more money, not less money for our infrastructure. Let me, in the time remaining, if I could continue to hear what Ford's perspective is. Also with the CAFE standards implemented, you've seen cars become smaller and lighter. And from a safety standpoint, I have here reports that were produced here in 2009 by the Insurance Institute. Also, USA Today has put out articles about this that suggested that there have been a 23% increase in deaths per cars as a result of the reduction in weight and size, and there were 1,300, and that equates to 1,300 to 2,600 additional crash deaths occurred in 1993 because of the vehicular weight reduction. We're just talking about deaths, let alone how many people were injured in the hospital and healthcare costs as a result of this. So you can see my conflict here, trying to achieve energy efficiency, but at what risk? If we are taking money away from our infrastructure and we're putting our families, our children, and our spouses at risk in driving smaller, lighter cars when they could be injured, what should we be doing about that if we want to achieve 55?
Well, I think all of us in the
Are the reports correct, or do you deny that or would you say these reports aren't accurate?
Well, I don't have the reports in front of me, so I can't speak to them specifically, but I'll be happy to follow up on that. In regards to the safety of all vehicles, I think all manufacturers continue to improve the safety of our smaller vehicles, different technologies, of course, as a part of that. There has been a downsizing of the fleet, partially because of fuel economy and requirements, but also partially because of affordability and what's happened since the global financial crisis. Our focus is on making every vehicle that we sell as safe as possible and giving those options for safety features to our customers. I'll follow up with you on the data that you recognize with our team so we can follow up on that.
Thank you very much. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. At this time, Mr. McNerney, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank the Chairwoman. Thank you, the panelists. Thanks for panelists. For your testimony today. Mr. Heinrichs, I'm honored to have you in front of me. How would you say that the new fuel efficiency standards that have been promulgated recently have affected innovation and job creation with Ford and with the American manufacturers in general?
Sure. At Ford, we were a big supporter of the One National Standard and all the work that went on, including back in the 2007 Energy Independence and Security Act. Let me give you an example of how the future looks with Ford in that regard. We took a plant in Michigan called the Michigan Truck Plant, which produced Expeditions and Navigators, large SUVs, and converted it into making small cars. And now that plant makes Focus, C-Max hybrid, C-Max plug-in hybrid, Focus battery electric vehicle, all in the same plant, down the same line, the only place in the world where that is done. That's the future, and that's what's driving advanced technologies with the fuel economy standards. At Ford, we believe it's very important that we use data with the government together for the upcoming midterm review to make sure that we're all moving forward, consumers and the industry, to meet the expectations of the one national standard over the next several years.
Are you leveraging research being conducted at the national labs, like Sandia National Labs, their internal combustion facility, for your innovation and new product design?
We have partnerships throughout the United States and with universities, with national labs, with all kinds of different, and other companies as well, looking at everything from hydrogen to, of course, batteries and electrification of the vehicles, and what's happening with compact natural gas and everything else. All of that is part of the future in the industry.
Well, my first question was regarding effective fuel economy regulation on innovation. What about federal regulation on safety? Is that a big impact on innovation and job creation as well?
Both advanced technology for fuel economy and also for safety is affecting the industry. It's one of the reasons why we brought in our remarks the need for homologation around regulation around the world, because we're a global auto industry now. We use global platforms. We compete globally. In regards to safety specifically, the most important thing is that we work together to make sure that we are having the intended results, obviously for the customer and the other individuals, pedestrians around the area. We want to stay focused on the delivery of those safety features to have the best benefit.
Thank you. How are foreign nations leveraging their workforce impacting your ability to manufacture in the United States, on a competitive basis?
Well, auto manufacturing takes place in many countries around the world. I think when you look at it, what we have asked for is that and we've supported all the U.S. Free trade agreements, that any free trade agreement going forward takes into account all aspects of what can happen, both tariff and non-tariff barriers, and also to make sure that there's a discussion around what mechanisms could be in place around currency manipulation. We feel that's another issue that needs to be addressed in free trade. The American economy is the largest economy in the world, and the American auto industry is the second largest in the world, and it's one of the most attractive for people to compete in. We want to make sure that if we're going to have free trade and fair trade in the United States, that other countries play along the same way. We're old-fashioned that way.
Well, thank you. I like your answers because they're kind of to the point and brief, and they don't wander around for 5 minutes. Mr. Dahl, I want to ask you a little bit about the impact of American education on our ability to be productive and competitive with overseas companies.
Again, we believe that education of the STEM areas is absolutely vital to our future success. We've seen, as we've stated earlier, a challenge in getting applicants for not only the manufacturing jobs, but also from an engineering perspective. So we feel it's absolutely vital as a part of our future here in North America from a manufacturing and a R&D center.
Are we, in your opinion, competitive on the educational aspect in order to keep competitive on the production and economic sectors?
I don't want to comment on the competitiveness of North American educational system. I can just only state that, again, we are still having some challenges here. We have challenges in other areas as well, but our focus here is North America, United States, and trying to get those education levels to be satisfactory for our employment.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. At this time, Mr. Johnson, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I came to Congress in 2010 after the 2010 election from the auto industry. I worked for a company that manufactured electronic components, highly engineered electronic components for all of the automotive and many of the recreational vehicle and 18-wheel tractors and those sorts of things. So I've watched with interest the progress that you folks have made in job creation in spite of the challenges that you've had. Let me I want to take a little bit of a broader scope in my questions. How does U.S. energy policy affect your manufacturing process? And with all the progress that you've made, do you see progress in this area maybe stalling or even reversed by tighter environmental controls any concerns?
Well, one of the most exciting things happening in the United States actually is the whole natural gas and what's happening in that side of the business that could possibly lead to lower energy costs for manufacturing in the U.S. In regards to, in general, regulatory environment, as we've discussed, one of the big areas of opportunity we believe exists here in the U.S. To work collectively with the U.S. and other governments to homologate regulations around the world when it comes to fuel economy, safety, other things, without sacrificing the intended outcomes of both those areas. But we think actually manufacturing can become more competitive in the U.S. with a lower energy cost base, which is certainly encouraging right now.
So it would stand to reason then, with increased pressure from Washington to regulate hydraulic fracturing and kind of stymie the development of oil and gas development, domestic energy development in the shale plays across the country, that would have a negative impact potentially on your industries.
Well, what I'll say is the auto industry is energy intensive. So the ability to lower energy costs in the United States would help make automotive manufacturing in America more competitive.
Mr. Dahl, any comments?
I can only second Mr. Heinrich's comments on that. It definitely would make us more competitive manufacturing-wise.
Great. Again, in a broader context, sorry for putting you on the spot, but what federal agency have you found to be most helpful in dealing with, and this is not a trial, so you can't take the fifth, so.
Well, I think the correct answer is all agencies are great to work with, and we enjoy our relationships with all of them as a large manufacturer in the United States. You know, we have I'll make a general statement, and that is we're U.S. citizens, we're Americans, we all have the same interests at heart. We want our country to be great. And so agencies that listen and work for collaborative solutions are the ones that we think are most effective, because ultimately we all want the same thing, but we have to find the best way to get there.
Right. Okay. Mr. Dahl, any thoughts?
I think we've had very good relationships with all of the agencies, so I can't single out one or the other at this point in time.
Well, without putting you too much on the spot, you know, the reason for this line of questioning, of course, is, you know, we hear from manufacturers all over the country and businesses all over the country about the negative impacts of the regulatory burden that comes out of Washington. I mean, the cost for starting a manufacturing company, sustaining a manufacturing company, complying across the board with the massive mountain of federal regulations. If there is a regulatory burden that causes you the most frustration, what would that be?
I wouldn't call it frustration, but clearly in the auto industry, one of the most important opportunities we have working with the government has been around fuel economy and emissions, and it's a very important topic for all of us. So that's one of the most important topics. I wouldn't call it frustrating, but it's certainly one of the most important.
You're quite the diplomat.
Actually, I wouldn't look at regulation. I would look at the current economic uncertainty, which is really the major factor that's affecting our investments in manufacturing right now.
Okay. Well, thank you. Madam Chairman, I yield back. Thank you, gentlemen.
I thank the gentleman for his time. Mr. Kinzinger, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank this committee for holding this hearing. This is kind of a step in a longer process we've had in talking about manufacturing in this company, and I think it's very important. You know, in the last two, and I thank you all for coming in too, by the way. In the last 2 decades, we've seen a steady decline in America's share of global manufacturing activity. This is due in part to increased competitiveness from emerging economies, but also due, I think, to outdated economic policies. Today, we have the opportunity to hear, we've had the opportunity to hear from a key part of that in auto manufacturing, a sector that we've seen hit, you know, major lows, frankly, and then come back from those major lows into what today appears to be resurgence and very good, a very positive day. I have a couple questions for each of you. I don't think I'm going to take all my 5 minutes. Well, it'll be up to you. Mr. Henricks, first, Ford has recently expanded operations in Chicago to produce the Ford Explorer, and as a result, the supply base has benefited very successfully. In the case of Illinois, do you know approximately, of course, how many suppliers you have that support those assembly operations? And do you know, again, in general, how much you purchase annually from these suppliers? I know it's asking for a very specific number, so it doesn't have to be very specific.
That's why I lean back. We have 200 to 250 suppliers in Chicago, in Illinois, rather, and we purchase well over $1 billion worth of material each year in Illinois.
And you know, by the way, I know it's a good question if you have to lean back. That's always a good thing. If you have to get the information from behind
It's hard to memorize everything.
Yeah, I understand that. Also, in your testimony, you mentioned currency as an issue that should be addressed as part of trade agreements. How does currency impact your ability to expand exports, specifically in the Chicago area, in Illinois, but in general?
Well, as I said earlier, I think we think the free market should set currency rates, and if a government has intervened in the past or threatens to intervene in the future, that affects currency rates. We don't think that's what fair trade represents and what free trade should represent for the United States. We compete with global manufacturers, whether we're producing in Chicago or producing anywhere in the United States. Ultimately, the global platforms we're on and the vehicles we ship around the world are competing with great companies, the strong companies around the world. And we need a fair and free environment to do that in. And it can't just be one-sided from the United States perspective.
Thank you. You know, that actually brings to mind maybe a little bit of a separate subject, but very related to this. Illinois is we're a manufacturing hub, obviously a center of the country, and both in transportation and people and everything else. But we've created in our state some terrible economic policies. I'm not going to ask you guys to comment on this, but some terrible economic policies, including increasing our corporate tax rate in the middle of a recession, which makes zero sense to me. And what we've seen is we're competing with Indiana, with Wisconsin, with Iowa, with the South, and we're having to fight tooth and nail to try to even keep manufacturing in our state, much less get new manufacturing. But what you see is all that competitiveness we have at the state level against other surrounding states that, frankly, they're winning. As a country, we have to compete like that around the world. Gone are the days where we can put up the walls and say, well, we're just going to do business here at home now. We have to understand that just like Illinois competes with Indiana, we're competing with India, with China. And so we have to create that environment. I think that's what you gentlemen are getting to, is the idea that create an environment here. We want to expand in the United States. This is where we want to be. You know, the weather's fine here. Everything's good. The people are great. Just create an environment that we can do that so that we can be competitive and access the consumers around the rest of the world. Mr. Dahl, you have a facility in the small town of Watseka, Illinois, which I represent, and you have, I think, approximately 130 employees. So thank you for that great injection into the economy there. I understand you've dealt with manufacturing operations around the world. What do you believe makes the U.S. unique relative to other countries and economies, and what are some of the lessons learned in that process?
Thank you. I go back to the unique, innovative, can-do attitude here within North America. The United States in particular, the associates don't give up. They see a problem and they pursue it, and they find a solution, and they're willing to work outside of their normal boundaries as a team to find that. And that's one of the main things that attracts us here to the United States.
Thank you. And I think that's a good point, because you see as government comes in and forces more regulation in some cases, I think it stifles innovation. And especially with the uncertainty in the economy, you have a lot of young entrepreneurs right now that may have an idea that have no idea how to pursue it, because it's created they don't know if it'll be successful, what the economy is going to look like. Finally, does Bosch conduct research and development activities in the United States, and what informs your business decision on where to conduct R&D activities?
We have corporate R&D centers in Palo Alto, California, and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have R&D centers in our various divisions that do regional specific R&D for particular products, and then also support the global development R&D for the rest of the divisions.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you, and Madam Chair, yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Harper for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, and appreciate each of you taking time from very busy schedules to join us and give us a little insight into what's going on. And a question for each of you, and I'll start with you, Mr. Hendricks, would be talking about intellectual property protection for the industry. How important is that to you? What are we not doing properly, and what can we do better?
Well, where it manifests itself from an OEM perspective in the auto industry is typically in aftermarket parts. And, you know, one of the things that, of course, we do is we stamp the Ford Blue Oval where we can on our own aftermarket parts that are obviously designed and up to our standards. But counterfeit components that go into the aftermarket business is where the auto industry is most interested in intellectual property protection. And I think we just need to continue to be diligent in enforcement, both of our expectations of what comes into these borders, but also with other governments to ensure that that's a priority, that recognition of intellectual property rights is something that's fundamental to global business competitiveness.
Mr. Dahl?
I absolutely concur. I think our biggest challenge is in the aftermarket area. We do have issues there. We have departments actually 100% dedicated to finding these counterfeit parts and to eliminating them. So any support we can get to basically at the borders to ensure that they're not coming in is key.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hendricks, you've managed facilities in a number of different states, and I'm sure they're varied in what is there. If you were looking at helping any place in the country, here's how you put your best foot forward. These are the things that we found are most effective to help on competitiveness. What advice would you give to a local area? If you're talking about a new product line, you're going to be looking at your existing facilities and comparing them. What is it that stands out that you would say was good advice?
Yes, well, we actually work with the state agencies to attract and hire personnel. So the first thing would be good cooperation and good screening processes for uncovering the talent that wants to come to work. It's not just about someone's willing to work, but can they work in a team environment? Are they willing to upskill their technical capabilities, et cetera? We work with many of our states, including the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where we've had good training and development funds to support the continual development of our workforce. I think that's very critical and one that I think that can differentiate at the local level. The other thing is partnerships with local community colleges or educational institutions to do some of that skilled trade development or the apprenticeship development that Scott talked about, or also in our own facilities. Those are good examples. I think the best advice I can give is just be willing to listen to what the needs are and find creative solutions because we want to be in your area.
Thank each of you. In order to allow sufficient time for the next panel, I'll yield back.
Thank you, and we appreciate the gentleman for yielding back and appreciate each of you being here today. At this time, we want to thank you and say the first panel has concluded. We would ask our second panel to bear with us as we have a very short recess and give the clerk time to preset your nameplates so you'll know where to take your seats. This first panel is concluded.
Thank you for all of your patience in this matter. Since all have been previously introduced by our original opening statements, Mr. Wehrman, you can begin. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Terry and Ranking Member Schakowsky, for inviting me here to testify today. My name is Jim Wehrman. I'm the Senior Vice President of Honda of America Manufacturing in Marysville, Ohio. Now, today I'd like to give you an overview of Honda's evolving presence in the United States, and then I'll spend a few minutes discussing areas where we think the government could be helpful to manufacturers. Honda's 3 decades of manufacturing in this country have been a real success story for our company, and through that success, we believe we've made a significant contribution to the U.S. economy as well. Our automobile presence in the U.S. began in 1969 by importing every vehicle that we sold here. But early on, our founder, Mr. Soichiro Honda, determined that to be successful, we needed to build our products close to our customer. So in 1982, we became the first Asian manufacturer to build automobiles in America. And since then, we haven't looked back. Last year, more than 90% of the vehicles we sold in the U.S. were built in North America. And as our local presence grew, we added many functions associated with building cars, including new R&D facilities, design centers, testing and certification laboratories, and parts manufacturing facilities. Today, Honda operates 9 manufacturing facilities across the United States, 4 of which have the capacity to produce more than 1.3 million Honda and Acura vehicles. Our other U.S. facilities produce 1.5 million auto engines, 1.3 million transmissions, 2 million general purpose engines, more than 400,000 power equipment products, and more than 575,000 all-terrain vehicles and ATV engines. Our 14 research and development facilities perform all aspects of new model development, with 24 Honda and Acura models conceived, designed, and engineered in the U.S. since 1991. Honda employs over 28,000 American associates nationwide. We're supported by an extensive network of over 500 parts and materials suppliers in 34 states, with almost $22 billion purchased from U.S. suppliers in 2012. But the process does not end there. It continues to evolve. And in the last 2 years alone, Honda has invested $1.3 billion to expand our U.S. manufacturing capabilities to position our company to export vehicles from the U.S. to 49 different countries and U.S. territories worldwide. And this expansion is simply the next step in the evolution of our U.S. operations. In 2012, Honda exported more than 90,000 vehicles, a number that we expect to double in the coming years. And in 2 years, we expect to be a net exporter. We will export more vehicles than we import. Moreover, we recently announced our intention to focus new responsibilities here in the U.S. for Honda's global operations. Historically, all of our global model development was led by Japan. In the future, though, the U.S. will serve as a center for developing our manufacturing processes for some of Honda's highest-selling vehicles. Associates here in America will lead the effort to generate new ideas, develop processes, and then train associates from Honda factories throughout the world in those new techniques. Our next frontier in the U.S. is Honda Jet, an advanced light jet aircraft that delivers class-leading performance, fuel efficiency, comfort, and quality. Our confidence in the U.S. as a manufacturing base is reflected by the decision to locate the world headquarters of Honda Aircraft in Greensboro, North Carolina. Now, I'd like to talk about 2 areas that we think the government has a key role to play in helping strengthen manufacturing. We hear so much today about the gap between skills workers need in today's manufacturing environment and the skills the workers have. But we also know that the government is facing difficult budgetary choices, and workforce development programs need to harness the joint power of the public and private sectors to ensure the productivity of the American workforce. One of the ways Honda fosters workforce development is through partnerships with local education institutions. For example, Honda Manufacturing of Indiana has worked with Ivy Tech Community College to develop training curriculum for Honda's equipment services and die services associates. Now, most automakers today are also developing alternative fuel vehicles. Honda is the only automaker currently producing 6 different drivetrains: an improved, more fuel-efficient internal combustion engine, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, battery, natural gas, and fuel cell vehicles. 10 states currently require manufacturers to sell a total of 5 million advanced technology vehicles between now and 2025. At the moment, however, the infrastructure simply does not exist to support these vehicles. And what's the greatest concern to us is that, with the exception of California, states' plans to assure that that infrastructure will be in place are in their infancy. The Clean Air Act grants authority to California and other states adopting California's regulations to require these advanced technology vehicles. However, neither California nor the EPA believes it has the authority to assure that the necessary infrastructure will exist. That places automakers in an untenable position. We're required to sell the vehicles, but there's no assurance that the infrastructure will be there to support them. 30 years ago, when Honda began auto production in the U.S., many doubted the wisdom of that move. So, I guess my light is...
Wrap up.
Okay. Well, today, U.S. auto production exceeds our production in Japan, and our U.S. operations are assuming leadership for much of Honda's global manufacturing direction. We continue to believe in the ability of U.S. to compete globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you. Chairman Terry and Ranking Member Schakowsky and members of the subcommittee, my name is Chris Nielsen, and I thank you for the opportunity to participate in this hearing. I'm president of Toyota Motor Manufacturing Texas, our facility in San Antonio that builds Tundra and Tacoma pickup trucks. And I'd like to spend the next few minutes sharing Toyota's view and how we might work together with Congress to improve U.S. manufacturing. First, I'm proud of the auto industry, the role it plays in the U.S. economy, and the role that Toyota plays in both. We've been part of the U.S. automotive story for over half a century and have been U.S. manufacturers for nearly 30 years. Today, we have 10 plants in the U.S., and with our 4 other North American plants, we produce 12 models, accounting for 70% of our U.S. vehicle sales. And this substantial manufacturing footprint also is boosting our ability to export. Our U.S. operations currently ship vehicles to 21 global markets, soon to be 23. Across these operations, sales, and R&D, Toyota employs over 31,000 people in the U.S., and we are directly and indirectly responsible for 365,000 jobs. Now let's talk about how we can make all that productivity even more competitive. The topic on which I'd like to focus my remarks is workforce training. If you visit an automotive manufacturing plant, one thing will be immediately obvious: people build cars. While there's a great deal of automation in modern auto plants, producing quality automobiles requires skilled, disciplined, and well-trained workers. Sadly, even with relatively high unemployment, our sector struggles to attract work-ready applicants. In fact, nationally, 600,000 skilled technical jobs are currently unfilled. Why? Manufacturing is not as widely viewed as a rewarding career as it once was, despite the excellent pay and benefits in today's advanced manufacturing jobs. And for those advanced jobs, only 5% of our candidate pool is qualified. Most applicants have only a single discipline, such as a welder or programmer, and many have basic educational deficiencies. Now, Toyota is not sitting still and confronting these issues. A great example is our Advanced Manufacturing Technician, or AMT program, developed in 2010, now rolled out across most of our plants and endorsed by the Automotive Manufacturing Technical Education Collaborative as a best practice. To date, Toyota graduates have a 100% pass rate in the technical written exam, which is double the historical average. But Congress can help the sector in 2 major ways. First, the government can help encourage cooperation among itself, academia, and the private sector to improve K-12 STEM education and teacher recruitment. Second, you can help focus resources on workforce programs that encourage nationally portable credentialed programs like AMT, emphasize next-generation multi-skill worker training, and encourage coordination between community colleges and local employers to help ensure curriculums meet local employment needs. Many of the right resources are already in place, but for manufacturing to remain competitive into the 21st century and beyond, technical and intellectual training must be more balanced and also more available. Toyota will do its part. We hope Congress will help by encouraging funding of programs promoting the kinds of technical skills that the 1.7 million job automotive sector needs to carry it forward into the future. Now, I'd like to close on a real positive note, and I'm going to stick with what I know best, which is the great state of Texas. Conventional wisdom is to locate plants near suppliers for obvious efficiencies. But in the case of the plant that I run, we went where the buyers were. Texans purchase about 20% of this country's Tundras. Our challenge was both to find skilled workers and to provide suppliers the opportunity to set up local operations. We offered suppliers space on our property, and today there are 21 on-site suppliers in San Antonio. A third of the suppliers are minority-owned, and 2/3 of our workforce is Hispanic. As you know, when the world's economy slowed, cars and especially trucks were dramatically affected, but we retained all of our employees and reinvested in their training and development. We asked for their help in improving operations, so we were ready when the economy came back. We preserved jobs. There are nearly 6,000 on site, and we may soon be in a position to create more, provided we can find the skilled workers we need. Now let me finish where I started. On behalf of the 31,000 Toyota workers in the U.S., we are proud of what we've accomplished. With the right kind of trained American workforce, there is no limit to what this country can do. We are committed to a successful and competitive industry for the long term and know that a highly trained U.S. workforce is essential to the success of our company and to the American economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Paradise, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, my name is Scott Paradise. I'm responsible for marketing and business development in the Americas for Magna. On behalf of our 20,000 American employees working at 62 manufacturing facilities in 15 states, it's a pleasure to be here today to share Magna's perspectives on the future of American automotive manufacturing. Magna, if you're not aware, we're the most diversified supplier in the industry today. What we don't make is tires and glass and just about everything else we do, including contract manufacturing and only contract manufacturing for our OEM customers, so we don't compete against them. We are completely global. We were established in 1957. We are the #1 supplier to the industry in the USA, and we're the #4 supplier globally in the market. We have over 400 manufacturing and product development facilities in 29 countries, and our sales last year were approximately $31 billion US. I'm also pleased to inform you that Magna has increased our investment here and our hiring here in the United States. Between 2009 and 2017, we've committed to investing nearly $840 million in 22 new or expanded facilities. And in the process, we alone inside of Magna are creating 6,500 new jobs in communities such as Michigan, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, Alabama, South Carolina, and Georgia. These are meaningful jobs with good pay and good benefits, kind of jobs that support families and help build for a better future. Let me commend Chairman Terry and Ranking Member Schakowsky for convening this important hearing today. It's critical to the health of the U.S. economy that Congress and the automotive manufacturing industry work together to encourage innovation and job growth. In that regard, I'll focus my remarks on the need for a partnership between government and industry as a means of growing the manufacturing base in the United States. Before discussing areas where the federal government can contribute to a successful partnership, I'll briefly call members' attention to my written statement that highlight areas where Magna and other private sector manufacturers must control their own costs, including R&D, workforce development, and product cost. While not exhaustive, they are illustrative of the types of costs that industry can control. Now I'd like to focus to the public component of the successful public-private partnership, and would like to propose several areas in which Congress and this subcommittee should take particular care in order to ensure American leadership in the automotive manufacturing sector. That is regulation and legislation, corporate tax rates, workforce development, and other incentives. When it comes to regulation and legislation, the key objective from Magna's perspective is to continue the active dialogue and collaboration between the public and private sectors to ensure that any new legislation or regulation achieves its policy objectives in a way that does not create new problems where none previously existed. In my written statement, I point out several areas where industry and policymakers have worked collaboratively to leverage the expertise and innovation of the private sector to meet certain policy objectives, including those related to driver safety and fuel efficiency standards. I would also suggest that hearings such as today's are critical to making this process work for U.S. consumers, manufacturers, and the U.S. economy. Another issue that Congress should address is the high corporate tax burden in the United States. It's been mentioned earlier, the U.S. corporate tax rate is the second highest among OECD countries and is a drag on American business and job creators. The high corporate rate discourages capital investment in the U.S. as companies may be lured to locate major operations in countries with a lower tax burden, such as Mexico. Reducing the overall tax burden on corporations in the U.S. would help spur greater capital investment, increase manufacturing output, promote job retention in the United States, and stimulate the U.S. economy. In addition, the United States is unquestionably the top high-skill manufacturing nation in the world. While market forces have pushed many low-skill manufacturing jobs abroad, the U.S. manufacturing industry has been undergoing something of a renaissance through high-skilled labor, including in the automotive sector. Competition, however, is strong across the globe, and for America to compete, we will need a top-caliber workforce to meet the needs of the 21st century manufacturers. Congress should therefore work to develop workforce training initiatives that respond to employer needs and prepare American workers for the high-skilled jobs of the future. Such workforce development initiatives could include investing in community colleges and stimulating K-12 vocational training, creating new scholarships for high-skill manufacturing programs, leveraging government procurement to place greater emphasis on new manufacturing technologies, adequately funding Workforce Investment Act programs, and supporting innovative public-private initiatives at the local and state level. For example, one state public-private initiative has been particularly successful is Michigan's Community Ventures Program. It's collaboratively run between Governor Rick Schneider and the Michigan MEDC Corporation. Out of that program, we have hired 75 people who were not working at the time and put them to work inside of our facilities. It's been a great success. Lastly, Congress can encourage the growth of the manufacturing sector through tax incentives. Such initiatives could include energy efficiency tax credits, R&D tax credits, infrastructure investments to modernize and improve our nation's roads, bridges, ports, and schools. In conclusion, the automotive manufacturing industry is a key driver of the U.S. economy, and we look to continue to participate in it heavily. And on behalf of Magda's 120,000 employees and the 20,000 here, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Appreciate yours. Mr. Smith, you are now recognized for your 5 minutes.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Terry, Ranking Member Schakowsky, committee members, for providing this opportunity to present some issues we face in automotive manufacturing. My name is Bill Smith, and I'm Executive Director of Government Affairs and Community Relations for American Axle and Manufacturing, a Tier 1 automotive supplier headquartered in Detroit, Michigan. AAM is a $3 billion supplier of automotive driveline and drivetrain systems. We operate more than 30 locations across 4 continents, with 12 of our facilities located in the United States. We have invested over $2.3 billion in these facilities, and we are in the middle of a $100 million investment in new tooling and equipment for our Three Rivers, Michigan facility to launch a new industry-leading disconnecting all-wheel drive system, which will provide enhanced fuel economy and safety over existing driveline systems in the industry. AAM currently employs 3,000 associates in the United States and another 8,400 in other countries. I have worked for AAM since 2005 and have had the personal pleasure of starting up new manufacturing operations in China, Poland, and the United States. And prior to my work for AAM, I spent 37 years in other manufacturing companies for a total of over 45 years of manufacturing experience. I feel that manufacturing is one of the key engines that will drive our economy to the next level. Let me provide some supporting data. Across the nation, 12 million Americans are employed directly in manufacturing jobs. For every dollar invested in manufacturing, $1.48 is added to the economy, the highest multiplier of any economic sector. Manufacturers in the United States perform 2/3 of all private sector R&D in the nation, driving more innovation than any other sector. However, our competitiveness is slipping, so much so that it is now 20% more expensive to manufacture in the United States compared to competing countries. Manufacturers are poised and ready to power the economy with the right policies in place. I would like to offer 4 areas in which we can focus to improve our manufacturing competitiveness. Number 1, corporate tax reform. 2, energy. 3, R&D incentive. And 4, workforce training. The United States now has the dubious distinction of having the highest corporate income tax rate among the nations in the OECD, as mentioned. Other countries are lowering corporate tax rates. We need to create a national tax climate that enhances the global competitiveness of manufacturers in the United States, and we need Congress to consider reducing the corporate tax rate to a level that will make the United States competitive with other major trading partners. And in the area of energy, energy is now becoming a significant competitive cost advantage for manufacturing in the United States compared to our major trading partners. We can widen this gap and enhance our energy security by embracing every energy resource at our disposal, with steps such as approving construction of new domestic and cross-border pipelines, new transmission lines,
expanding energy-related transportation infrastructure. Also, we can standardize and streamline regulations and policies to provide access to traditional energy resources, electricity generation, and the expansion of renewable alternative energy. Moving to R&D, innovation propelled the United States to its global leadership position in manufacturing, but other nations are eager to take our place and are establishing R&D incentives that are more attractive than those offered by the United States. We must provide a strong and permanent competitive research and development R&D incentive. We need a stable, forward-looking R&D incentive in place to guide our budgeting decisions to perform R&D in the United States. And finally, moving to workforce training and skills, world-class manufacturing demands world-class talent proficient in STEM disciplines. Skills must match our level of manufacturing technology. AAM is currently hiring approximately 500 associates at our Three Rivers, Michigan facility. Due to skills mismatch, we are only able to hire 1 in 3 applicants for our manufacturing assembly positions. And on a national level, more than 600,000 manufacturing jobs are unfilled due to skills mismatch. This skills gap threatens U.S. competitiveness. Our manufacturing workforce today is required to understand statistical process control, value stream mapping, machine maintenance, and other numerous skills to maintain our competitive position. So we need to put a national focus on increasing proficiency in STEM education and start generating interest in manufacturing careers much earlier in our education systems. So in summary, we need your help in supporting and enacting policies to address corporate tax reform, energy, R&D incentives, and the workforce skills gap. It is our belief at AAM that these actions in these key areas will improve our manufacturing competitiveness and stimulate economic growth and job creation. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Ms. Parker, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Terry and Ranking Member Schakowsky and members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Dr. Annette Parker, and I am the Executive Director of the Automotive Manufacturing Technical Education Collaborative, AMTEC, at the Kentucky Community and Technical College System, KCTCS. I'm proud to be here today to share our story and to discuss with you how we can further support automotive manufacturing in the United States. In order for the United States to keep its leadership position or competitiveness in the global economy, the workforce must keep pace with the knowledge and innovation in advanced automotive manufacturing and other STEM disciplines. The Automotive Manufacturing Technical Education Collaborative was created because education leaders in Kentucky and other states came together and recognized this key challenge for the automotive manufacturers to maintain a flexible workforce and develop new worker competencies that would enable automakers to maintain high-performance work organizations that create jobs and add value to products and services. We recognize that highly skilled engineers are part of the solution. However, there also we need to fill the gap for middle-skilled workers and technicians in advanced automotive manufacturing. These types of workers generally have an associate degree or industry-recognized post-secondary credential. Yet institutions of higher education are not producing the number of students needed by our employers. These types of workers also need the fundamental skill set that are common across all of the automotive manufacturing companies, and it is the basis of the development of the AMTEC Center. The auto workers have shared with us that they need work-ready employees with the basic skills to whom they can provide specific company training. In order to meet industry skills, AMTEC has recognized that the automotive industry requires uniquely trained employees to support increasingly flexible and lean manufacturing lines, fluctuating customer demands, a growing focus on green manufacturing, and rapidly improving technology. In response to these industry demands, AMTEC offers an industry-endorsed multi-skilled maintenance certification assessment, validated college curriculum aligned to industry-endorsed skills standards, shared best practices and educational models among colleges and industry partners, and flexible career pathways to fit unique needs of students, employers, and employees. AMTEC, through the leadership of the Kentucky system, built a collaboration of approximately 35 community colleges and automakers in 12 states to build consensus in the development of national standards for multi-skilled maintenance or mechatronics technicians for the automotive manufacturing sector. The development of competency measurement tools to assess knowledge, skills, and abilities of incumbent and future STEM technicians. The development of career pathway models that follows key success factors in order to create a pipeline for the future workforce. And we also have AmTech academies that we convene with key stakeholders to share those best practices and learn and grow from each other. Through the development of standards, competency-based modularized curriculum, and assessments, AmTech has created a unique collaboration of industry and colleges that provide education of workers prized by the industry. In 2011, the National Governors Association, through case study, selected AmTech as a model and national best practice. The NGA states that the AmTech story shows that it is possible for governors to work collaboratively with industry, with community colleges, and with each other to provide people with the opportunity to build their technical skills and ensure both America's future prosperity and their own economic security. AmTech is at the forefront of education because the future workers involves a very different kind of technical worker, a very different kind of partnership, and a very different kind of education. As a collaborative, we are excited about the future as we work with K-12 educators, community colleges, automotive manufacturers, and suppliers to ignite our students' interests, to educate them to compete globally, and accelerate them into the workplace to become competent, well-educated STEM workers in the advanced automotive manufacturing industry. AmTech Academy events have been successful in convening college and industry stakeholders to learn and grow from locally Pacific best practices. As a matter of fact, the next AmTech Academy is hosted by Nissan at the Tennessee Technology Center in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, April 11th and 12th, 2013. The recommendations that AmTech would provide include continued funding and support of collaborative efforts across the automotive sector and other sectors that drive supported national standards and assessments. We recommend the expansion of collaborations that engage K-12, higher education, industry, and government entities. The National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education funds have been critical to the development and success of AmTech and similar centers of excellence that need to be continued with support funding. And finally, these efforts should be national in scope and therefore cross local, regional, and state lines to increase collaboration and effectiveness while reducing duplication of funds and efforts. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you. Ms. Kinsey.
Chairman Terry, Ranking Member Schakowsky, members of the subcommittee. My name is Kathy Kinsey. I'm a Deputy Secretary at the Maryland Department of Environment, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today to address the subcommittee on an issue that we believe is very central to the long-term future of the automobile industry in this country, and that is the need for alternative fueled vehicles and development of a robust fueling infrastructure in the nation. Maryland has enjoyed a very long association with General Motors, and the future of the automotive industry in this country is very important to us. Baltimore is now home to GM's new Allison transmission plant, which manufactures the electric drivetrains for the Volt, and also which will start production next week of electric motors for the new Spark EV that they're manufacturing. So expansion of the alternative fuel vehicle market is particularly important to us. We see it as critical to achieving our air quality and our long-term greenhouse gas action goals. Many in this room know very well that poor air quality is one of our state's most intractable environmental problems. And in spite of the tremendous progress that we've made in reducing emissions and improving fuel efficiency of our automobiles, Car and truck emissions remain a major cause of our ozone non-attainment problems in Maryland and on the East Coast. And atmospheric deposition of nitrogen is responsible for nearly 1/3 of the nutrient pollution in the Chesapeake Bay, and half of airborne nitrogen oxides is attributable to the mobile source industry sector, mobile source sector. Transportation is second only to the energy sector as a source of greenhouse gas emissions in our state. So expansion of the electric vehicle market is a very high priority for the O'Malley-Brown administration in our state, and we are very committed to developing a robust market and a fueling infrastructure for plug-in vehicles in our state, and we're moving forward on a number of different fronts to do that. And I really would like to respond to the characterization that the development of our infrastructure is in its infancy. Our draft greenhouse gas plan, which is due to be finalized very shortly, has set a goal of 60,000 plug-in electric vehicles on the road in Maryland by 2020. Last year, the legislature passed two very important bills removing potential regulatory barriers to development of a state charging network, infrastructure charging network. This year, the legislature passed two bills extending tax credits for plug-ins and charging stations both, and extending HOV lane access. And I will say that GM worked very closely with us on those initiatives to ensure passage of both of those bills. We have in Maryland and will continue to provide significant state funding for installation of public charging stations. In 2010 and 2011, we awarded $500,000 in matching grants for charging stations. This year, Governor O'Malley has committed $1 million in his capital budget for charging stations at MARC and Metro stations. And we now have more than 350 public charging stations in the state. And this ramp up has occurred over a relatively short period of time. 2 years ago, our General Assembly established the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council, and it's comprised of members from all of the interest groups. GM was a member of the council, and we looked comprehensively at all the barriers and challenges in our state to establishing a robust charging infrastructure network. There is a final report that was issued in December with many, many recommendations for removing barriers, enhancing the market, developing our charging infrastructure, and it included a very detailed blueprint for installation of a statewide charging network that would be adequate to service 60,000 PEVs that we hope to have on the road in Maryland by 2020. And this year, because of the work that we've done on that council, the General Assembly extended the council for another 3 years to continue the work so that we can dig a little deeper into some of the more challenging aspects of developing the infrastructure network, develop pilot demonstration projects, engage in more outreach and education. We've been working collaboratively in Maryland with the other East Coast states through the Transportation Climate Initiative on a regional initiative to develop a charging network along the I-95 corridor on the East Coast that's going to hopefully enable long-distance travel throughout the region. And in closing, I just want to say that in Maryland, I believe we've demonstrated our very strong commitment to working with the automobile industry, the charging station manufacturers, the utilities, our sister states, and the many other stakeholder groups to make the necessary investment in our infrastructure. And we've seen a significant expansion of the infrastructure in a short period of time, a big upward trend in EV sales in Maryland, and we expect it to continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My first question goes to Mr. Wehrman and Mr. Nielsen. And as manufacturers with U.S. facilities, will an EU-U.S. free trade benefit you? And what would you like to see in this area? Mr. Wehrman first.
Yes, as I mentioned, the export has become a much bigger part of our business for Honda in North America. And without question, any free trade agreement certainly helps us. We recently began exporting to Korea as a result of the free trade agreement that was signed with South Korea, and that's very beneficial to us. We would expect to see more opportunities to export to Europe, to the EU, as a basis of based on a free trade agreement or any other free trade agreement for that matter. It certainly opens opportunities.
And what would we need to have in that trade agreement to facilitate your exports of U.S. manufactured Hondas?
Naturally, elimination of any tariff barriers, but also looking at non-tariff barriers and ideally any work towards harmonization of standards, because clearly the difference in standards increases the cost of manufacturing. The more commonality, the more volume we can get, the more competitive we can be, both in North America and in other markets as well. So.
Mr. Nielsen.
Chairman Terry, I believe a very similar response. You know, as a global automaker, we strongly support free trade across the globe. So any type of, we're supportive of you know, trade agreements with all regions, including Europe. And to the second part of your question, you know, also we are in support of harmonization activities, but I would add not only between the U.S. and Europe, but also harmonization on a more global basis. A forum does exist today that all automakers are part of, and we think...
What's that?
I'm sorry?
What's the forum?
It's, I'm sorry, I don't recall the exact name, but it's a world, a global harmonization forum that allows participants from each of the main global regions to work on harmonization, you know, across the globe. And, you know, as a company that exports to 23, you know, global markets, that's critically important to us.
Thank you. And then for Mr. Paradise and Mr. Smith, you have facilities in Europe and the U.S. How do you see the potential for free trade agreement to benefit your companies? And we'll go with Mr. Paradise first.
Anything that has to do with free trade, we're supportive of, and anything, as Chris pointed out, that balances and makes sure that things are fair between countries is important to us. We can manufacture anywhere in the world, but if we can have a balanced trade agreement between us and being able to ship product back and forth without unnecessary tariffs that penalize our products, that's where we're looking to get to.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Terry. We don't make decisions at AAM strictly based on trade policy, but are very much in support of trade policies that are well thought out and balanced across the planet. So.
All right. And then again to Mr. Paradise and Mr. Smith. Both of you in your testimony mentioned the U.S. tax code. Now, obviously, we aren't Ways and Means, but we're working to get their jurisdiction moved to us. Thank you for laughing.
Thanks.
But I'm going to ask the same question I did of our first panel in that respect. Do you have any feel for what a reformed corporate tax code should look like by way of, is the appropriate number 20% or 25%? Have you guys had any feel? Mr. Smith, you seem...
Well, no, again, the gray hair comes from a lot of thinking and things like that about the world. Certainly something 25% or south thereof would be really good.
Do you think that would level the playing field so you can be more competitive, not at a disadvantage?
It may not completely level the playing field, but certainly puts us a little bit more in the game. I mean, you know, working in other countries, there's a lot of very aggressive folks out there that we work with to try to attract our business, and at least that moves it in the right direction.
Mr. Paradise?
Anything you can get us 30% or below will make us competitive. When you look at the success that Mexico has had in securing OEM facilities, which ultimately attract us as suppliers to be close by, nowadays logistics costs are huge, and we're under huge pressure to locate as close as we can to the OEMs.
All right, very good. Yield, recognize the ranking member, Schakowsky.
Okay, as promised, Mr. Wehrman and Mr. Nielsen, I wanted to go back to the issue of rear view video systems in the cars. And let me just state again, I'm going to be meeting with a woman this week whose husband tragically ran over and killed their 1-year-old, and then 5 years later he committed suicide. These are just agonizing situations. And when we lose 2 children a week, they're not rare. So these kinds of systems could reduce by 95% those accidents. So you may not have these numbers now. I'd like to know the percentage of cars sold by your companies that currently come with display screens and your projections for next year and when you think you might reach 100%. What percentage of new cars sold by your companies have rear view cameras standard? And what percentage of Honda and Toyota's cars sold in Japan have rear view cameras? Let me get to that. Are there different standards for what's standard in a car in the U.S. when it comes to safety, U.S. and other markets? Let me start with you, Mr. Wehrman.
Microphone. First of all, yes, there are different standards, but I can't say I'm an expert as far as what the standards are in Japan compared to North America, because my focus is, of course, on North America.
Sure.
Regarding the rear view cameras, 96% of the Hondas sold in the U.S. do have rear view cameras today. And our intention is over the next couple of years to make that 100%. And that's not based on regulation, it's just based on our overall commitment to safety and because customers do appreciate this feature and they want this feature. So that's what's driven it. Our general feeling on the regulation is certainly a regulation that improves the safety is something to be considered very heavily. We would recommend it be based on a performance standard than a specific technology. It may very well be over the next couple of years that a better technology for detecting a child behind the car might be available compared to video, and we'd like to have that flexibility to adapt the best and most effective technology should that happen. So.
Thank you. Mr. Nielsen?
You know, I'm pleased to say that for all of our trucks and sport utility vehicles, we currently have rear view vision systems available. And as you know, those are the vehicles that are the most critical in terms of rear visibility. We have rear visibility systems available on most all of our passenger cars as well. I don't have a specific number for you.
As an option.
As an option, that's correct. And also, we are supportive, certainly, of the rule in principle. We'd like to also understand the technical detail, but we agree that this is a very important issue and are very supportive of it as well.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Dr. Parker a question. So you are saying that right now the certification process is just for Kentucky and for Amtech, but that you are working to make a national standard so that a certification can be available provided there's certain training.
Yes, we believe that the standards for the fundamental skills for multi-skilled maintenance is essentially the same across all manufacturers, all automotive manufacturers, and have thus worked with our industry partners to define what those standards should be and have developed standards that follow APA requirements of high-stakes assessments that they are using to analyze incumbent workers' skills and also to certify new STEM students that are coming through the pipeline.
Now that we have manufacturers, is there anyone who doesn't agree that some sort of a national certification or standard of competency would be helpful? So that's a good direction to go in, and thank you for your leadership. I wanted to ask Ms. Kinsey, are you aware of there's a battery project right now going on in Illinois, a collaboration of universities and industry to make a more efficient battery for cars, smaller and better? Are you aware of that?
I am not familiar with that.
Okay, so hopefully we're going to be able to be on the leading edge of technology. Just want to tell you, I myself would be more interested in for my next car, and my Ford, are they still here, is 10 years old, so it's probably time for me to be thinking about it. But it's typical. Grandmother's car with 78,000 miles on it. I should get something good when I trade it in. The infrastructure issue really is critical. So you're saying that the technology is all there, but Maryland has made a commitment. What about other states where people are considering buying electric cars?
Well, the Transportation Climate Initiative, which is comprised of the Northeast states, New York, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, all along the corridor down through Maryland, are working collaboratively together. I mean, all the states in the Northeast are working on various infrastructure initiatives, and we're working together on this regional initiative. So I can't speak with specificity about what other states are doing outside of their involvement with us in this regional initiative. I do know that New York is also a leadership state. You know, they have done a lot with the development of the infrastructure in that state.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Guthrie, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I welcome Dr. Parker here from our great Commonwealth. She's from Woodford County. I think Mr. Stronach has a place in Woodford County, a rather nice place for Magna, who owns Magna, and it's a it's a show place for horse country there. It's just wonderful, and so thanks, and your facility in Bowling Green, we appreciate that very much. What's interesting, I was saying earlier that my father worked for the automotive industry, lost his job at Ford in 1982 when I was a senior in high school. So, and I would tell you, I would bet if you had all the CEOs or guys in your level here talking about what can we do to make the automotive industry more competitive and jobs stay in America, not some of you sitting here, but some of maybe earlier, their predecessors would have said, we need barriers. We need to make sure that we don't have other competition coming in, because I mean, I've lived through that. And now nobody's here asking for that, and nobody's here saying we need lower wages, we need whatever. What you're saying is we need better tax rates. And I was in a meeting with the president. He said that we could agree that we need the corporate tax reform. That's not our committee unless Chairman Terry pulls something off, but I know that our chairman in the Ways and Means is working for that. And so hopefully this is a call to Washington to come together, because a bipartisan meeting here today, and we all want manufacturing to stay in America. And there's one thing easy that you said, or not easy to do, but something we can do to have immediate impact, and that's regulatory certainty. All of you said it. And energy is when we're discussing the Keystone Pipeline in another meeting right now. But the question of how we're going to get this workforce trained when we have unemployed people dropping out of the workforce, that's a little longer term, because you've got to change mindset. So my question, I guess, for Dr. Parker and any of you that want to add, everybody here says they're looking for workers. Everywhere I go in my district say they're looking for workers. We know people aren't working. And how do we get people into the KCTCS system, which is our community college and technical school system in Kentucky, or in these? Why is the market not working for labor? I think you said 600,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs in America today. Why isn't the market working for labor?
Well, I've done some research in this area, and one of the things that the research has shown in manufacturing specifically is that we were of the thought that people didn't understand that manufacturing is not your father's old manufacturing environment, and they just needed to understand that, young people and parents. And the research has shown that that's really not the issue. They understand that manufacturing is high tech now. They understand that it's important to our economy and that they need it in their backyards. But they don't think that their kids should go into manufacturing, parents. And so what we have to do is a better job of understanding that the skills that these workers will have, these STEM students will have, are transferable in manufacturing. Because over the last 30 years, as we become global in companies, it's very important that they do have a global footprint, that there's been this fear that all jobs would go to China. So we need to do a better job of informing our parents and our young people about what a job and the skills in manufacturing would provide to them and to their future. And then I think we need to quit condemning, and we don't do this in Kentucky, so let me make that clear, but we need to quit condemning K-12 and come together with K-12 and with business and industry to provide those solutions. And we do a good job of that with several of our programs. We have an outstanding program that Mr. Nielsen referred to that is emulated in Kentucky at Bluegrass Community and Technical College, where the college, the companies, and actually not just Toyota. Toyota's providing this for everyone in Scott County in that region. And the K-12 system all come together and work together towards these issues. And so it informs the young people and it informs the parents about good jobs, good skills, and a future. And that's where I think we need to go.
Well, because when I, like I said, they closed the Ford plant down. I've told this story, but a friend of mine, the beginning of our senior year of high school, said, I know somebody with some pull that can get me on at Ford. Graduate from high school and work for 30 years and retire and be in the middle class. But if you show up today to one of your facilities with only a high school ability, you can't afford because the productivity's not there. But if they show up with industrial maintenance, with tech, all of these different lists, they're in middle class. I mean, they literally are middle class jobs in Kentucky for people with those skills. And what I've tried to figure out, in the state government here, how do we why isn't the market working? Because it seems like somebody would want to make $60,000 or $70,000 a year with skills for 2-year skills instead of working at minimum wage or somewhere for the rest of their life. And we haven't been able to make that connection yet. Yeah. And we got to figure out how to do it as a country because people can have those, and we need those jobs.
Right. I think we need to do a better job of informing our parents and our young people that manufacturing is a good, viable career, and that you need an education beyond a high school education, and the community colleges have a significant role to play there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And before I recognize the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Sarbanes, I'll say that just this last week we had that same discussion in a forum back home. And yet, we talked about K through 12. When you're in high school, they judge themselves about how many kids go to a 4-year college. And so we've got to turn that thought that somehow if a kid doesn't go to a 4-year college, that's a failure on the high school part. That's just not true.
Can I make one quick comment? Wheeling High School in Wheeling, Illinois, is a STEM high school. And I'm telling you, these kids are job ready, if they want to be, when they graduate from high school. So it's not simply, I mean, there are ways to do it, even in high school.
Yeah, and that's where we need to get that back into the high schools, as she testified. Yep. So, gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Sarbanes, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the panel for being here. Ms. Kinsey, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. First off, thank you for the integral, integral role you've been playing in Maryland's efforts to be really on the cutting edge when it comes, particularly to sort of the take-up on electric vehicles. And I want to congratulate you and the Maryland Department of the Environment, the council that you're a member of, and Governor O'Malley, frankly, for the commitment that's being made to that. And you sort of described the phenomenon that if you build it, they will come, in the sense, if you build an environment in which it's easier to access these opportunities than not, you'll start to get the sort of engagement and traction that we want to see. What I was curious about is kind of looking back over Maryland's coming to this experiment. What were some of the things that were identified as real hurdles that maybe you discovered afterwards weren't as tough to overcome as maybe they'd been made out to be? What was some of the narrative ahead of Maryland really taking the plunge on this that was borne out in the experiment, and what parts of that narrative sort of refreshingly did you discover weren't as kind of sinister or daunting as they may have seemed to be? I'd be curious about that.
Well, I guess I would answer that by saying that we have a lot of challenges remaining, and I will acknowledge that. Funding is a huge issue for us right now. the electric vehicle charging stations are not, comparatively speaking, very expensive, but funding public charging stations, given our budget constraints at the state level and the federal level, it is a challenge. We definitely need to work to get more funding committed and dedicated to charging stations. I think that we are starting to see in Maryland much greater acceptance of the need, the understanding the need for these vehicles. One of our biggest challenges going forward is working with employers. You know, everybody has an electric plug in their home, so everybody can charge their electric vehicle at night, overnight. That's not the problem. The challenge that we're facing going forward is convincing employers to start installing these vehicles so that the charging stations, so that their employees will start buying these cars and driving to work with confidence. I mean, range anxiety is one of the two biggest barriers to acceptance of electric vehicle, plug-in vehicles. The other one is the cost. And so these things are all intertwined. And I think if we can, you know, expand significantly the number of charging stations, I think we're going to see a very, very significant increase very rapidly of the number of stations. But that's a challenge. And the other big challenge that we're going to be looking very closely at going forward when our council reconvenes later this fall is urban charging and multi-unit dwelling charging situations. These are very challenging because most residents in these situations don't have access to a garage or a private driveway or an electric plug. And so we really have to come up with some really good creative solutions to providing that charging infrastructure in the urban and multi-dwelling settings. So we need to have some demonstration projects in some of our urban areas. We'd like to start working on getting employers and businesses to install charging stations that can be for use of employees and patrons during the day, but then for residents at night when the businesses are closed. So
that's helpful because you've identified really, out of all of the various things that need to be focused on, the two key factors are the charging station infrastructure and the range anxiety, and they're interrelated, obviously. If you've got more charging stations along the way, you're going to be less anxious. I mean, I have range anxiety. I've hesitated to take the plunge because I commute every day from north of Baltimore, and I think that distance is just enough to produce that extra level of range anxiety and worry about whether I can get here in time for the chairman's hearing. So that's an impediment to me. But the availability of charging stations would obviously help with that, and then manufacturers have a role to play in terms of the vehicles themselves and their ability to overcome that range anxiety. But again, I want to congratulate you on the efforts Maryland has made, and you've mentioned GM and some of the others who've really stepped up and made that a collaborative experiment, and I think it's an exciting thing to watch. Thank you.
At this time, we recognize the Vice Chairman of the committee, Mr. Lance. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for being at committee and then leaving and then coming back. I have followed your testimony, and it's a pleasure to be with you all. Mr. Werman, I want you to know that I have a 2004 Honda Accord with 175,000 miles on it as of yesterday, and it's going strong, 4-cylinder stick shift. But not an electric car yet for the reasons that my colleagues have suggested. Mr. Nielsen, it was a pleasure to meet with you and your colleagues in the chairman's office, and we had a wonderful discussion about initiatives to encourage young people to enter manufacturing because these jobs do provide high salaries and strong benefits, and I know that Toyota and others are working in this area. It's my understanding that San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the United States, and it is the largest majority Hispanic city in the country. And perhaps you've discussed this with colleagues, but would you elaborate on career opportunities afforded to the Hispanic community by Toyota, especially given the diversity of San Antonio's population?
Thank you very much for that question. We really embrace the fact that that we're a part of the San Antonio community. We've been welcomed with open arms from when we first broke ground almost 10 years ago. And being a key participant in the community and providing job opportunities for the young people in the community is really important to us. And we look at our workforce development at several different levels. Of course, we commented in the testimony about our advanced manufacturing technician program, which really starts at the high school graduate level and allows them through a work-study program, 3 days at work, 2 days at school, to earn enough money to pay for their education so they can earn an associate's degree without having to go into the significant debt that so many people have to go into to earn their degrees. But we really look to go even further than that. We start really at the middle school level in supporting a lot of STEM initiatives in the community to expose the young people, especially on the south side of San Antonio, to careers and opportunities.
Is that the side of town where there is the larger Hispanic population?
It is. It is. The plant is located in the south side, and overall San Antonio is about 2/3 Hispanic, but on the south side it's maybe 80 to 90%. So that's the most of the population is located there.
Thank you. Would there be comments from other members of the panel on this issue as how we move forward to make sure that young people are trained appropriately for the positions that your great companies provide? Ms. Parker.
Yes, I would just like to say that Mr. Nielsen's program with the Alamo Community College District is an exceptional program that Toyota's taken a major leadership role within AMTAC and across the country as a best practice. It's also been used by outside of the automotive industry with Lockheed Martin. And over 10 years, that same program has been offered to Lockheed Martin, and the program has students now that one of their students, a model student, is the chief negotiator for Lockheed Martin now and has attained her master's degree. So it's an outstanding program that has support from the government of San Antonio, the industries in San Antonio, and the college and K-12 system.
Thank you. I think this will be a continuing issue, especially since so many young people are in debt as the result of higher education. And although interest rates are currently low, I would imagine at some point they might increase, and it would further exacerbate an already extremely difficult situation. And obviously we have to move in the direction in the 21st century of making sure that young people are well educated and well educated in the positions that your companies and others provide. And although I do not agree with the President on all issues, I certainly was in support of his statements during the State of the Union address that we need a fundamental analysis of higher education in this country. Costs are extremely high and have far outstripped rates of inflation. And I commend the efforts of all on the panel who have been involved in this, and I thank you for your participation today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lance. And now the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Olson, you are now recognized.
I thank the chair. And good afternoon and welcome to the panelists. I appreciate you coming back after the sequestration. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming back here again. As you can tell, I'm a Texan. And we have a chance to brag about Texas, then by golly, I am going to brag about my home state. Coming up on the screen here is a picture that I'm sure all of you saw during Super Bowl, the most recent Super Bowl, with a Toyota Tundra pickup truck towing the Space Shuttle Endeavour to its final resting place in California. I saw that commercial and thought, this is Hollywood, some special effects. But then I talked to Mr. Nielsen. No, this was actually a Toyota pickup truck made in San Antonio, Texas, modified with a special trailer hitch, and it pulled the shuttle over the bridge. The problem there, right there, is that bridge could not withstand the weight of the shuttle and the huge tractor that NASA had to get over the bridge. That was the big obstacle, getting the shuttle from LAX Airport to the museum. Toyota stepped up and got that to its destination. That picture is Texas in a pecan shell, Tundra pickup truck, Space Shuttle Endeavour, and you see in the back, Randy's Donut Shop. Thank you, Ms. Nielsen, for getting that space shuttle home. And again, I want to talk to you about Toyota's motivation for locating to San Antonio, Texas. We had a choice to do that almost a decade ago, which, as you know, you provided 6,000 direct jobs through both Toyota Motor Manufacturing and your parts suppliers, and they've actually moved with their plants on site. So can you tell me about the business climate in Texas, how that influenced your move, state, local tax incentives, ability to purchase a large piece of land and bring suppliers, 21 of them, right there to San Antonio? Tell me about that.
Well, thank you very much for recognizing our Tundra product. We're awfully proud of the product we make, and that was a proud day for us towing the shuttle. And certainly, if there's a shuttle available to tow to the Space Center in Houston, we'd be more than happy to do that as well.
We're working on that.
But you know, our decision to locate in Texas was really first and foremost driven by that's where the market is. That's the largest pickup truck market really in the world, and we wanted to be located there. And we found that working with both the state and the local governments in Texas to be just a wonderful experience, a very pro-business environment, very supportive of us. We needed some infrastructure put in place specifically around training. Since in the San Antonio area, manufacturing was not a large part of the economy historically, and we put in place initial training programs that initially serviced Toyota, but as Ms. Parker has mentioned, now are serving many other companies as well, such as Boeing in their facility where they provide the technical support and service for Air Force One, Lockheed Martin, and a number of additional companies, international companies as well, that are locating in the San Antonio area and are able to take advantage of the education infrastructure that we've put in place through cooperation with state and local governments.
And sir, as you know, San Antonio is Military City USA. Air Force bases, Army Hospital, Brooke Army Medical Center. Would you elaborate on what Toyota's done about our combat war heroes coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan who've joined your team? I mean, and about their special skills and advanced training. How does that translate to the workplace?
You know, the transition of so many returning veterans came at the perfect time for us as we were struggling to fill many of these multi-skilled maintenance technician positions at our plant. And of course, our education programs we're putting in place will be very helpful for us in the long run, but in the short run, in order to close some of those gaps, we could focus on recruitment of some of the returning veterans. And I'm very proud to say that just over the course of the last year, we've hired 30 returning veterans from all branches of service. They come in with both the technical skills they learned in the service, but perhaps even more importantly, the ability to work as a part of a team, to be very disciplined. And I think that has been extremely helpful to us at the plant, and we're very proud to be able to offer good employment opportunities to those returning veterans.
As someone who's served in the Navy for 10 years, thank you for taking care of our veterans. They've been fighting for our freedom. They deserve our support, and they come back home. And I guess we all can agree one thing, let's work hard this going forward, is, as we said, make sure that blue collar does not become some sort of term of derision. I mean, these are good paying jobs. Right down the Eagle Ford Shale Play, right there south of San Antonio. You go out right now with a high school degree, maybe a couple years of trade school, junior college, learn some skills, pass a drug test, you can be making $65,000 an hour right off the bat, $100,000 within 5 years. That's good money, that provides for a family, that's just great. We need to make sure the American people realize, the kids realize, they've got a future in manufacturing. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the 5-minute Texas commercial.
I can go another 5 minutes.
I bet you could. I bet you could. And I just have to counter by saying, you know, there is something special about being in the middle of America with great rail and truck access. So with that, I ask unanimous consent to include in the hearing record a statement by the Motor and Equipment Manufacturers Association, and I know we've run that by your side already, so hearing none, so ordered. Ms. Schakowsky, you also have a request.
I do. I'd like to put in the record a statement from the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations.
And without objection, so ordered. So thank you. You have provided excellent testimony and feedback from our questions. All of you were spectacular, and we thank you. And you are now adjourned. But I have to say, before we adjourn up here, remind members that they have 10 working days to submit any questions for the record. You may receive questions from us, and we would appreciate a timely reply to those questions that we were unable to answer or ask. So with that, we are adjourned.